Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
Harry was sitting in his office one day when Tony got an alert from Friday, whose personality he had ended up putting on 2.0 to save himself the effort of naming it. Apparently there was a break-in at one of his warehouses and an item had been stolen. Since the warehouse was just a storage space for old equipment, he wasn't too stressed about it, but he decided to at least check out what was taken. Signal decoy invented by Dr. Henry Hank Pym. Friday said after checking, "Wow, we're talking old school shield." Tony said, "Haven't heard that name in many years. Do we know what the device does?" Harry asked. "Allows you to counteract signal blocking and jamming." Tony said, "Hank Pym invented it years before wireless communications was even a thing. Quite ingenious. Too bad he dropped off the map when his wife disappeared." "What happened to her?" Harry asked. "I don't know," Tony said. Apparently the only person that thought they knew was Pym, and he was ranting about other realms. He trailed off, only now having realized the man might not have been lying. "Son of a bitch, do you think he's behind the theft?" Harry asked. "We can't know for certain. S.H.I.E.L.D. knew about the device, so that means Hydra did too." Tony said, still in thought. "Should we act on this?" Harry asked. "While the device is impressive, it's no doomsday weapon." Tony said, "Friday, please set aside some resources to monitor for anything out of the ordinary that might benefit from such a device." "Of course, Mr. Stark," Friday said before she went silent. Tony saw a couple of windows pop up where he could monitor her progress and the status of the search. "What do we do when Friday finds us a lead?" Harry asked. "It's stolen tech. We let the police handle it, or worst case scenario, we contact Fury and they send in S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony shrugged. Harry knew better than to argue tech with Tony, so he shrugged and let it go. If something came up, they'd respond as necessary. Something came up the very next day when there was a mention of Hank Pym by a detective in San Francisco. Apparently he'd helped a suspect escape custody and was suspected of harboring him from the law. Something strange was going on, though as it seems the suspect, Scott Lang, was only caught because of a tip by Pym's daughter, Hope Van Dyne. Tony reported what was happening, and Fury sent a ghost squad to go monitor and see what was going on. The squad informed Fury of their findings, and he told them to hold off on arresting anyone until the buyers were in the room with them. It was a golden opportunity to get to some previously unknown players. The next day, Harry received a report that Scott Lang had been taken into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody, along with a group of common criminals, who Scott had recruited to help in the heist, and a formerly unknown group of members of Hydra. A couple of questions under Veritaserum led them to the conclusion that Lang was just trying to help and stop Hydra from getting their hands on shrinking technology. Harry decided to take a personal interest in this one at that point. He arranged for a surprise and then went to see the man. Lang was being well taken care of, and Harry found him in a guest suite enjoying a beer and watching something on the big screen. "Good evening," Harry said politely after he knocked and entered. Scott got up, put the beer down and walked to Harry, who looked like an intern to him since he had decided to stick with smart casual. Since he knew Scott would not be dressed to impress with the clothes handed to him while his suit was in lockup. "Hi," Scott said as he held his hand out to shake. "I'm Scott. Are you here to tell me when I'm being released?" Harry smiled and shook his hand. "My name is Harry Potter, and no, I'm here to tell you that you're not under arrest to begin with," he said. "We tend to treat heroes with a bit of common courtesy around here. You're free to go whenever you want. Your friends have already been given a lift to your apartment. They have also been fairly compensated for their part in helping stop Darren Cross." Scott smiled. "You know, you have the same name as that billionaire who keeps on spending money on helping third world countries." "Do I?" Harry smiled along. "I hadn't realized." Harry beckoned Scott to the door and started leading him. "We arranged another lift for you unless you would like to stay here for a while. We are willing to offer you the standard fee, or we could consider giving you a job." Scott was confused. "A standard fee for stopping terrorists? We pay a consultation and danger fee for people who work with or for us," Harry said, making it up as he went. He knew the man had financial issues and a criminal record for doing what he felt was right by exposing a company for overcharging their clients millions. Had Harry known, he'd have arranged something for the man. "We can get you paperwork if you are interested." Scott looked uncomfortable. "I kind of already have a job," he said. "I don't know how long I'll be working with them or if there's even still a job, but I have to find out from them first." Completely understandable. Harry nodded as he continued walking, taking them to a portal door through a series of elevators and hallways so that they could take Scott back home. "I appreciate your honesty and loyalty. Those are qualities we value here at EPI." As they walked, someone brought a cardboard box which they handed to Harry. Harry in turn handed it to Scott. "Here's your sweet back." Scott was surprised. "You're just giving it back. You're not going to try and reverse engineer it first. We already have shrinking tech, so we don't need to steal Dr. Pym's patented technology." Harry lied easily. Technically they had things that shrunk, even though Harry had never tried it on a living being except to change proportions on a person as a joke, like the time Loki's hands were enlarged to the point where he could barely lift them. "You do?" Scott asked. "Would I lie to you?" Harry asked with a devious smile. "I don't know, would you?" Scott asked, also smiling. He didn't know why, but he liked the kid. It might have been the mention of being paid, though. He really needed to set things right so that he could see his little girl. They walked through the door and Scott was surprised at who he saw. His ex, her fiancée, and his daughter. His little girl ran to him and he hugged her. "Hi there, Peanut," he said happily as he hugged her. "Daddy," Cassie exclaimed. "Is it true that you saved the world?" "Your dad sure did, but you have to keep it secret, right?" Harry said over his shoulder as he looked around for any eavesdroppers. Cassie nodded like she was in on the world's best secret. "I promise," she said. Scott looked up at Harry and noted his outfit had changed to a beautifully tailored business suit. Harry winked at him and held a hand out to Scott and shook his. "Scott Lang, on behalf of myself, EPI, and the rest of the world, I'd like to thank you for your service in keeping everything secret while you were undercover. As a small reward for your efforts, we have taken the liberty of arranging to have your records expunged, as well as a modest payment that will help you get on your feet." Harry handed him a business card. "This is my personal number. Please call me if you ever need a job. We could use people with your skills, values, and strength of character." Scott was stunned and almost asked what was going on when he realized that Harry was doing him a huge favor. "No problem," he said instead. "You have my details. Feel free to call me if you need me or my strength of character again." He joked. Harry laughed and clapped him on the back. "Thanks, Scott. I'll definitely keep you in mind." Then Harry turned to the family and approached Maggie. "I apologize for having Scott deceive you. It was integral that the people we were after still approached him when they did, so we had to swear him to secrecy." Maggie just nodded, astounded. One of the most powerful people on the planet just thanked her ex-husband, shook his hand, laughed with him and apologized to her on his behalf. It was a little much to take in. Had it not been for the limo which was sent to come pick them up and a promise of a nice evening out by an agent beforehand, she might have thought it was some kind of trick. Her fiancé Jim was not so impressed it seemed. "Just who are you exactly? You can't just have people's records expunged." "Scott Lang is a criminal and Scott Lang is a hero," Harry interrupted, "and was under contract with EPI to perform a duty for the sake of national security." He looked the cop in the eyes before relaxing a bit. "Look, I checked into you and you are a good man. I have not known Scott long, but he put his life on the line to protect innocence, and that makes him a hero in my book." Harry looked at Scott while he continued to talk to Jim. He didn't even know he was getting paid. "If you find out he's gone off the straight and narrow, feel free to do your duty, but until he does, could you not just allow a man some time with his daughter?" Jim looked thoughtful but nodded reluctantly. He loved Cassie himself. He could not imagine being kept from her. "I'm not a monster, I'm just trying to protect my family." "And that's how it should be, right?" Harry asked. "I imagine he feels exactly the same, something you two have in common perhaps." Jim didn't like the comparison but had to agree. Soon Harry walked them to the waiting limo which would take them to a family-friendly but upper-class restaurant where they would be seated in the best seats in the house and given anything they wanted on EPI's tab. Scott waited outside while everyone else got in. He looked in the box and saw a letter and a stack of bills that made his eyes bulge on top of the suit. "What's this?" he asked. "We couldn't find your bank details, so we paid you in cash. I hope you don't mind." Harry apologized. "As for the letter, please give it to Dr. Pym when you see him again." Scott leaned in and whispered, "Thanks for doing this, you have no idea what it means." "I think I do, Scott. I have loved ones too," Harry assured him, "and I may have needed to do things in my past that weren't strictly legal to help those who couldn't help themselves as well." He slapped Scott on the shoulder again. "Do me a favor and don't give that ass a reason to keep you from your little girl, okay? And call me if you ever find some big wigs stepping on the little guy. I can help you set things right." Scott smiled and mock saluted, "Yes, sir." Then he turned and got in the limo as well. They were soon off and Harry smiled after the car. He hoped to hear from both Scott and Hank Pym in the near future. When Harry got to his office, his mirror vibrated. "Ancient One?" he asked, seeing Yao on the other side, knowing Stark's mirror had a listening AI in it. "Master Potter." Yao responded with a nod. "How can I help you today?" Harry asked with a smile. "I'm calling because I can help you," Yao said. "If you'd please join me." She turned the mirror so that he knew where to put a portal. When Harry arrived, Yao greeted him with a smile. Your recent involvement with Scott Lang has created a divergence in the timeline. And you're happy about it? Harry asked. Usually you want me to change what I'm doing. Because diverging is bad. Yao simply smiled and put a sling ring on. She turned her hand and a sling portal formed. Through there is a place you will very soon become familiar with. It is called the quantum realm. Because of its nature, I've not been able to enter it physically since one needs protections from the elements there. And you want me to know where it is because? Harry asked. Because I need to inform you of a couple of factors you will need to know. Yao informed him. While my portals are able to open a rift to this realm, it does not affect its probability. The quantum realm is always in flux in both time and space. It is a fascinating realm where everywhere is accessible at once but also not. The dimensions of time and space operate differently there, all except for one factor. Harry sighed. It's magic, right? Yao smiled that infuriating smile of hers. Magic is the one factor that's universal, because it permeates all energy spectrums and all dimensions. She confirmed. When you open one of your portals to the quantum realm, however, the consequences would be devastating as it would spill into our realm. I'll just not go there then. Harry said, why show me a place I shouldn't ever open a portal to? Because you are kind and you will definitely go there. I'm giving you this warning to prevent a catastrophe. Yao warned before smiling again. Fortunately, you have another form of travel which will take you there easily and without consequence. Portkeys? Harry asked. No, the other one. Yao said. Apparition? Harry asked. When he thought about it, he realized something Fitz and Simmons had said. Wormhole? Indeed. The quantum realm is accessible via 3 methods, magical like you use, mystical like I use, and a more recently discovered method. Yao confirmed. Discovered by a certain Dr. Pym. Harry slapped his head. Of course, his wife, she's still stuck in the quantum realm. Yao nodded. My opening this portal and showing you this has affected the timeline for her rescue. The doctor will not have time to build a device and a safe form of transport. Fortunately, you already have one. A vehicle that can traverse space will be able to traverse the quantum realm, but be careful. The quantum realm can affect the mind of those who go there. Your mind's protections should protect you, but anyone you take with you might struggle to function. So be aware of their movements at all times. Harry nodded. Thanks, Yao. Can you give me a deadline? You should have 2 days, even though the chances that you'll need that is very small. Dr. Pym will contact you tomorrow morning with an urgent need. Yao said. Harry nodded and decided to leave as soon as possible to go prepare. Thanks again, you know I like it when you give me straight answers. You should do that more often. Harry said. Yao smiled sadly. The chances that this is the last time I help you is large. My time is soon approaching. Harry stopped mid-movement to summon his portal again. Then he turned. Are you saying? Yao nodded. The events that lead to the new Sorcerer Supreme is coming up in the next couple of months. Harry sighed, knowing he couldn't discuss his plans with her or she'd know, and it would change everything she sees from now until the event, so he nodded at her sadly before stepping to her and hugging her. I'll miss you, my friend. He said. You have been a good friend. These last 3 years, Yao said, hugging him back. Maybe you will surprise me with a visit before my time has come. Harry smirked. Is that your way of saying you haven't seen me visiting you again? I will want to introduce you to my replacement. For anything besides that, you would know better than me, I suspect. Yao smiled back, trying for mysterious, though she knew Harry was the one hiding things this time. What though she didn't know? Harry just gave her another squeeze before he let go and summoned his portal. I'll see you next week. He joked, knowing that he would likely have her watched. Then he stepped through and let the portal close behind him without a backward glance. Heimdall, he called into his mirror. When Heimdall's face appeared, he continued without waiting for a greeting. I need you to keep an eye on her. You know what she does and sees. She is important. If you see her coming to any kind of life-threatening harm, I need you to call me on the mirror immediately. Of course, my prince, Heimdall said. You can rely on me. The Sorcerer Supreme is a large factor in the forces that protects not only Midgard but our entire dimension. Losing her would be a great loss. Thanks, Heimdall. Harry said. I owe you one. Heimdall smiled. You owe me nothing, my prince. It is both my duty and an honor to be of service. Doesn't change the fact that you're doing me a favor. Harry argued. I'll make sure to have something put together for you at my office. To surprise me, yes. You know you could always just reveal the location of the building, he offered. Even if I did that, you'd still not be able to see me. Harry said. A secret within a secret. You are a devious one, Prince Harry. Heimdall joked. I have you to thank for that. Harry said honestly. Anyway, I have to get prepared for my next mission. Cheers. He ended the connection and glanced across the room. Tony was not in his office, and neither was Bruce. He walked through to Tony's side and walked into the penthouse of Stark Tower. Harry found Tony and Pepper sitting on the couch with a full bowl of popcorn. Harry smirked and went to lounge in one of the other couches. What are we watching? He asked. Harry, can't you see we're taking some alone time? Tony asked. Harry didn't budge but glanced at them. Okay, you two have fun with that. Then he turned back to the TV. I'm just going to wait and see what you're watching then, before I go off to prepare for going to the quantum realm tomorrow. Tony was quiet, but Harry knew he got his attention when the intro scene of the movie paused. Explain, he said. What are you doing, Tony? You're watching a movie with your fiancé. Harry said, don't interrupt it on my count. When Tony refused to play the movie again, Harry got up and waved at Pepper, who was smiling despite knowing what Harry was doing. Sorry to have interrupted. We'll chat again soon, okay? Then he walked back into Tony's office to go look for Bruce through his office. He found Bruce reading through a musty old volume on alchemy, which he obviously took from Harry's library, in his favorite chair in front of a fire in his quarters. Sif was probably off-world, as Bruce tended to spend time with her after work, but he liked to read and learn after hours when she wasn't around. Harry had entered after knocking when he was told to come in. Hey Bruce, he said. Hi Harry, Bruce said. I'm sorry, but the kitchen is closed. He joked. Bruce still cooked for anyone that was in residence at Avengers Mansion. Harry and Natasha tended to join for breakfast, but Harry cooked for the two of them at night usually. He'd begged off that night so he could help Scott. I'm not here for food, Harry said. I'm here to plan. What's the plan? Came Tony's voice from the door. He was scowling, but Harry could see the twinkle of curiosity in his eyes. Nice of you to join us, Harry mocked. But weren't you on a date? Tony glared at Harry. Pepper isn't too happy right now. You know that, right? Don't look at me. I asked you what you were watching and you decided to be snide with me. Harry defended. It's not my fault your curiosity can't be sated. That doesn't matter because Pepper knows that you knew what you were doing. Tony defended. But does she know that I knew that she'd know what I was doing? Harry asked with a smile. Please don't, Bruce said. Either tell me what's going on or allow me to continue reading. This Flamel guy sounds insane until you figure out the reason for his doing things the way he did. I didn't know Flamel wrote a book, Harry said, walking closer to inspect the tome. He didn't, Bruce said. From what I can tell, someone named Purnell was documenting the search for something called the Prima Materia, to complete the magnum opus or great work. Are you telling me Nicholas Flamel's wife, Pernell Flamel, kept a journal of their discovery of the first matter of the universe? Harry asked. Even he had heard of how Nicholas Flamel had been trying to use alchemy to discover the soul of the world, the first building blocks of the universe. How do you know that but you don't know about the book? I'm needing to translate this, he indicated the tome, from 13th century French to try and understand it. Bruce said exasperatedly. It's something I heard in conversation. People were discussing Nicholas Flamel's death shortly after his 675th birthday. Harry shrugged. I always thought it was interesting but amounted to old wives' tales. Well, according to the book, Nicholas was using alchemy to try and isolate the building blocks of creation. They were trying to understand the universe to enrich themselves using chrysopoeia. Bruce said. What? Harry asked. Transmutation of one substance into another, specifically gold. Bruce said. Oh yeah, Harry said. The Philosopher's Stone was said to produce the elixir and make gold from metal, right? Maybe the stone is composed of this prima materia. Bruce had a thoughtful look but shook himself. That's not what you came here for, he reminded Harry. Harry clapped his hands together. That's right, we've got preparations to make. The next morning Harry's phone rang as expected. Okay guys, quiet down, he told Bruce and Tony, who had been excitedly talking about the possibilities and ramifications of quantum energy. He answered the phone. Good morning, Dr. Pym. How can I help you? How did you know who was calling? This is a brand new burner phone, Pym said suspiciously. Did Scott call you? Harry heard the sound of someone who sounded like Scott objecting in the background. He did not, which I suppose means he trusts you more than he trusts me, Harry said. I've got certain sources that informed me to expect your call and make certain preparations, which you would probably want to discuss with me in person rather than over a phone line. There was silence from the other side, but only for a couple of seconds. Are you in contact with her as well? Pym asked. I'm assuming you're referring to your wife Janet, Harry asked. You are, Pym asked incredulously. I'm afraid you are misunderstanding something. Harry apologized. Our source is here on Earth, not in the quantum realm. We had been wondering how you would know. Can you tell me? There was more silence before Pym responded. Scott, did he make contact? Harry asked. Yes, though he didn't know it apparently, Pym said skeptically. Listen, in your letter you said that you had resources and you'd be willing to fund any research I have, no strings attached. Would that include a workforce of hundreds over the next 2 days? We really need to get to the quantum realm before the probability fields shift and Janet is lost to us again. Hank would not normally trust anyone, but even he'd seen the work PI and EPI did. They didn't need his research, they were already saving the world one distribution center at a time. Also, he didn't have a choice. He couldn't think of any other way to save his wife. Sure thing. But you don't need that. Harry said. We're all set for an expedition. All we need is a way to find your wife and we're all set. What do you mean? Pym asked. They couldn't already have a tunnel, could they? Scott said something about them having shrinking tech already. Maybe this was part of their technology. I mean, I can get you there and back, but you need to point the way once we get there, okay? Harry asked. We can do that, Pym said instantly. Where do we meet you? Send me your current location. Harry said, I'll come to you. Pym hung up and sent a message instantly. 5 minutes later his doorbell rang. Mr. Potter, he said, answering the door. Were you on your way or something? Let's just say transportation is something I'm really good at, okay, Harry said with a smile. And call me Harry. Hank nodded and opened the door to allow Harry in. Please come in. Thank you, Dr. Pym. Harry replied as he was seen to the sitting room where Scott was waiting with Hope. He was introduced. Offered some tea and then they got down to business. What do you mean, wormhole? Pym asked. Have you been experimenting with quantum singularities? Do you have any idea? I mean, we have a way to access the quantum realm, and no, we've not been experimenting with singularities. Harry interrupted. The problem will be your technology. Unless it is shielded in a very specific way, it won't survive the journey. What kind of shielding? I can build a housing that will isolate it completely from the outside world if that will work. Hank offered. That might work, but we'll still need to add something to insulate it from electromagnetics and radiation. Harry said this was taking forever. Hold on, let's start again. Hi, my name is Harry Potter. I can help you rescue your wife. Can we please get going? Then he opened a portal, much to all of their shock, and beckoned for them to follow. Oh, and please bring whatever tools you need to track Janet. Then he walked through and went to sit down at his desk to look out his window at the stars. He was in his lunar base and it was almost full moon, so he had a perfect view. Tony, Bruce, and Jarvis were waiting in one of the hangars, where the vehicle they'd be using was getting a new set of rune protections, just in case. None of these vehicles were made to be apparated, and they knew Harry would end up being the power source after the apparition. They were fairly certain everything that needed to would keep working though. A moment later, Scott came through first, followed shortly by Hope. Hi, Harry said, and welcome to EPI's secret lunar base. Scott walked to the window and looked down at the surface of the moon. Are we in a skyscraper? He asked incredulously. Nah, the building isn't that tall. It does look that way though, doesn't it? Harry laughed. He'd used the same enchantments as on the guest house on New Atlantis. Hope was standing next to Scott. We can't be on the moon. She objected. She was thinking of what would be involved with setting up something like that, not to mention the fact that it felt like normal Earth gravity. Is this some sort of virtual rendering? She asked. Harry just shook his head and said nothing as they waited for Hank. When he arrived with his tools, Hank had the same response as Hope. He looked at his phone and said, My phone says we're in Malibu. Yeah, we've been thinking of changing it so that it says we're on the moon, but I'm told that would be an issue, so we've just left the connection as it is. Harry said, Did you bring what you'll need? I did. We'll have to assemble the isolation enclosure, but we can have that done in a couple of minutes. Hank confirmed. Awesome, let's get to the hangar then. Harry said as he went to the door and opened it for them. It's not far, I just need to run a quick errand on the way. He led them to an elevator which went down 3 floors to the ground floor. See, I told you we weren't in a skyscraper. What did you run out of money bringing an office building to the moon? Scott joked as they exited the lift. There were a lot of people walking around, and as soon as they appeared they were approached by a portly man in a suit. Mr. Potter, he greeted before turning to the guests. You must be our code orange guests, he said before proceeding to hand out blank laminated orange name tags to them. Then he took out a clipboard and looked at it. Please attach the name tags to your person and state your name for the record. Are you sure this is necessary, Eric? Harry asked. Fury's orders, Mr. Potter. Agent Eric Koenig said. He was previously stationed at an unnamed secret base he liked to call Providence. Harry had convinced Fury that he could simply automate the base, since anybody that went there now needed to be let in on the secret anyway. We've got somewhere to be, Harry started. Best to follow procedure quickly then. Eric interrupted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Koenig was Fury's man and he made sure Harry knew it. Harry didn't mind. Harry just shook his head bemusedly as the guests attached the name tags, stated their names, and Koenig asked them some standard questions before thanking them and leaving. He had a Call of Duty game to get back to. His brother wasn't above shooting him in his absence. When Hope pointed out that their names were suddenly on the name tags, along with their professions, Harry just smiled and continued leading them to the hangar. There was one moment when they walked between the buildings, when the guests all stopped and looked up to see more stars than many humans could claim to have seen. The dome of the base was actually made from concrete and steel, but Harry had taken the time to enchant the whole thing completely see-through. Only up close could you tell there was something there, much like freshly washed clear glass. Are we really on the moon? Hank asked. Why would I bring you here through a portal just to lie to you? Harry replied before he continued to lead them to the first hangar. The path was well trodden, but Harry still wanted to plant grass on the entire base. It would add something, he thought. How did you change the gravity here, and how are we breathing? Hope asked. I'd tell you, but you wouldn't believe me, not until you've seen the standard demonstration, but we're in a hurry, so let's get to it. Harry said as he finally opened the door to the hangar, which was located at the edge of the dome and had access to the outside. Inside, Bruce, Jarvis, Fitz, Simmons, and Tony were all waiting. Upon seeing Tony, Hank stopped dead. I'm not letting Stark near any of my technology. That's fine, Tony said with a smile. He knew Pym had issues with his father, so he'd try to ignore the blatant hatred in his eyes. We can just let Jarvis handle the shielding. He usually does that anyway. How will your AI add shielding? Hank asked. Is there a fabrications facility here? Excuse me, Dr. Pym, but I think you are misunderstanding something. Jarvis spoke up. I am Jarvis. Oh, okay then, I thought Stark was talking about his AI. Hank apologized. He still didn't want Stark near his tech. I used to be an AI, but now I'm a person. It's wonderful what Jarvis started. Stop, Harry interrupted. For purposes of speeding things along, I've not told them anything about that. Let's just get this going. Anybody with sufficient mental protection that wants to go are allowed to, provided they strap in, of course. I'm not losing any of you because you forget who, what, or where you are. Harry turned to Dr. Pym. You will need to show at least one other person how to use your tech to get to your wife. As long as it's not Stark, I don't mind. Hank said. What's your problem with me? Tony asked. I know you hated my father, but I haven't so much as sniffed in your general direction, and you're treating me like I kicked your puppy. I'll tell you what my problem is. Hank answered, but Harry interrupted. Children, please behave or we're not going on the family trip. Harry turned to Hope. He does realize we're all here to save your mum, right? Both Pym and Tony shut up. Hope was glaring at her father. I can use the device as well. Would that work? She offered. The quantum realm can affect the mind, or so I'm told. Harry said, there's a technique for preventing external influences from affecting the mind, and I'd like someone with those skills to be your backup. He pointed at Tony and Bruce. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner are your two options here. I don't know if their minds are strong enough, or even if the technique works for them the way it does for me. But I know mine are strong enough, and that's why I'm driving. Piloting, Tony said automatically. Flying, Harry countered. Whatever, Tony said sullenly. Harry was right, there were more important things to worry about. Jarvis approached Pym, who reluctantly handed him the machine and a remote. You need a bit of space, the device is shrunk. Jarvis nodded and moved away a bit before unshrinking the device, which turned out to have been quite large. Interesting. It was all Jarvis said before he started working. The fabricators were taking the measurements and starting to produce a plastic casing that could be put around the unit. Jarvis started inscribing the parts that would be exposed with the microscopic runes they would need to protect the circuitry. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Harry started. Harry then proceeded to explain their plan step by step, glossing over the how and sticking with the what and when. When he was done, Pym lifted his hand. Harry thought he was acting like a child because he had treated him like one earlier. I have a couple of questions. Pym started, as he looked over to Jarvis, who was busy inscribing runes with a handheld rune scribe laser. It was one of Tony's designs and worked wonderfully. You program what you wanted the laser to do, and it did it with a small display on the back to show you the progress before you could move the device. And you don't have clearance for any of the answers. Harry said easily. If you want to go with, you have to accept that you don't have the rights to this technology, just like I don't have the rights to yours. Pym deflated. Hope actually smiled at this. Hank Pym was not used to being left in the dark. How safe is this? How many times have you been to the quantum realm? Pym asked then. Those are good questions. Then Harry clapped his hands together and said, everybody ready? I'm all done on my side. Jarvis said as the automated assembly arms retracted into the ground again. The device now had a stylish black cover which covered it all the way around except for the buttons and display. He pressed the button and the device shrunk down. It's quite ingenious how you used a small device, enlarged it and added functions before shrinking it again. I imagine it makes life much easier for you. It does. It was all Hank said as he took the device and looked at it to see if he could note any differences. He saw nothing except the cover. Are you sure that's all you needed to do? That device could probably sit at the center of an EMP blast that takes out all the electronics in New York, the state, not the city, and it would still work with what we put on it now. Tony bragged. How? Hank was starting to get frustrated. There was so much here he wanted to know, but he kept on getting smiling faces and no answers. We can discuss that later. Harry said, let's go to the quantum realm. He quickly took some energy from the ring into himself, just in case, and then he removed the ring. He didn't want to chance anything happening to it while in the quantum realm. Then he led the party to the Humvee which was standing close by. He opened the rear passenger door for Hank, but he looked at Harry like he was insane. "Is this your transport into the quantum realm?" Hank asked. Scott rolled his eyes and got in. "No way," he said as his head stuck out again. "Really? This is so cool." Then he was gone again. Confused and intrigued, Hank walked to the door to look into what appeared to be the bridge of a science fiction-inspired starship. "How?" he repeated as he climbed in. "Let's call this my shrinking tech," Harry said, "but this is manipulation of dimensions, not the space between molecules." Hank argued. "So this is how you do what you do?" Hope asked. "You can manipulate dimensions, which would explain the portal we arrived here through." "Nope," Harry said. "But it is related to how I made the portal in a manner of speaking." "There is a large difference, Harry," Bruce spoke up. "You are comparing bending space and making holes in it." "I know, but for the purposes of this conversation, all things are connected to the one central subject," Harry said, alluding to magic making everything they were doing today possible. "Fair enough," Bruce conceded. He didn't really agree, but decided to let it go for the purpose of stopping the impending argument. Harry said goodbye to Fitz and Simmons, who would be their ground control, seeing what they saw from a workstation in a control room attached to the hangar. Harry then led Hank, Hope, Scott, and Bruce to a workstation where there were seats around a table. Both the table and the seats had heavy straps, and the tabletop could be spun, so that whatever was on top of it could go to whomever was most capable. Harry helped strap everyone in and then subtly cast sticking charms on their seats to keep them in place. "So Scott," he asked over his shoulder where Jarvis was helping Scott get strapped in, "how did you get in contact with Janet?" "I didn't," Scott said. "She connected with me. I got a memory that wasn't mine, and Hank and Hope figured out it was a message." "How did you know it wasn't just a dream?" Harry asked. "I wasn't sleeping at the time," Scott said evasively. Harry smirked when he noted Hope looking away and her cheeks developing a very slight amount of color. "I got you," he said. Then he looked at Pym. "So how does your machine work?" "It narrows in on the connection between Scott and Janet. As long as they are entangled, we should be able to track her," Hank said. Jarvis, who had recently looked at the machine, extracted 2 electrodes from the device after strapping it down on the table and brought them to where Scott was strapped. "Where do I attach these?" he asked Hank. Hank indicated his temples, and Jarvis nodded while connecting the cables to Scott. Bruce had strapped himself most of the way in, when Harry finished with Hope and Hank and went to assist him. Tony was at another station, which would have a very good view of what was happening behind and all around them. Jarvis, who was going to be Harry's official co-pilot, would have the same view, but he'd have access to the spare controls. Harry would be strapping him in too, just in case his physiology wasn't as immune as they hoped. When everyone except for Harry was strapped in, he went to the captain's chair, which had the controls for the ship, and sat down. He didn't buckle up as it was completely unnecessary. The entire car had been inlaid with adamantite wiring since apparition was not strictly used the way they were about to. "Jarvis, how is everything?" Harry asked after he lifted them up off the floor of the hangar. "Life support, inertial dampening, and propulsion are all looking normal. I don't think anything is getting past the shielding either. If anything goes wrong, you'll need to do your part to seal and support," Jarvis reported, looking at the screen with the monitoring systems. "Everything looks good from our side as well," Simmons reported from Mission Control. "First priority if anything goes wrong will be to return immediately. We still have time to adapt our strategy," Tony said. "If we make it there, the chances of things going wrong next time are just as large," Hank argued. "If we can spend 1 hour extra there, we should do that rather than return." Tony looked at Hank with a hard glare. "Dr. Pym, you have no idea what you are talking about. The power source for this trip is singular past your capability to comprehend at this point. If there is even the slightest chance of losing it, we're returning. Do you understand?" "What is your power source?" Hope asked, intrigued. "I'm afraid that information is also not something we are at liberty to discuss without certain protections, Miss Van Dyne. Suffice it to say, I agree with Tony," Jarvis said. Bruce nodded along. "We're talking about a human life," Hank argued angrily. "What could be more important than that?" Tony looked like he was about to answer, but a look from everyone in the know silenced him. Harry replied for him, "We understand your urgency. If you'll acknowledge the preparations we made for this trip, you'll understand how seriously we're taking this. Not to mention the millions in precious resources we used to outfit this vehicle for the trip," Jarvis said, referring to the adamantite. "Either way, Hank isn't in charge here. Harry is," Tony said. "If it wasn't for him, we'd not be offering you this chance. We wouldn't even be able to." "Okay, people, let's all calm down," Harry said calmly. "We're all here with the same goal. Let's get going so that we can bring her home, shall we?" There were nods all around, and Harry pressed a button. A rod extended on both sides of his seat, and he took hold of them. Then he closed his eyes as he started remembering the blank space Yao had pointed out to him inside the quantum realm. He started concentrating and feeding his magic into the rods, which were lined with adamantite, which in turn went through the entire car. Every part of the car was monitored for leaks and intrusions as well. "We're going in 3, 2, 1 now." Harry forced the apparition to spread through the car and a new sensation overcame him. Usually apparition had a squeezing sensation, like you were being sucked through a straw, which was explained to him as the expected sensation of going through a wormhole. This time, when he released his magic, he felt connected to the car as it was squeezed into a pinprick. Strangely though, the inside of the car didn't feel like it had changed at all, and there was a much longer sense of movement. "What's happening?" someone asked, but Harry was too busy concentrating. He could tell they were still traveling, but he couldn't open his eyes or lose his concentration. He was worried that if he dropped his concentration they'd be splinched, and losing part of the car with some of the passengers would be a horrible thing to happen just then. He didn't even know what would be between Earth and the quantum realm, especially when traveling by magical wormhole. A couple of seconds later, the sense of movement ended and Harry could feel the squeezing sensation end on the car. He quickly looked over at Jarvis. "How are we doing?" he asked. "The ship is still intact." Jarvis said, "But my PMMG has stopped supplying me with power." "What?" Harry, Tony, and Bruce all exclaimed. "I suspect we just need to give it a couple of seconds to build up its resource," Jarvis said calmly. A tense couple of seconds passed, until Jarvis smiled. "It's back online. What just happened?" Hank asked. Jarvis's heart stopped working for a bit. Harry said with a breath of relief. "How are you doing, Harry?" Tony asked with concern. Harry smiled. They hadn't even started moving yet. "I'm doing well, actually," he said as he looked out the large monitor in front of them, which worked like a window even though it was actually just a large mirror. "Welcome to the quantum realm," he said as he looked at Hank. "Your turn, Dr. Pym." Hank nodded after taking a look at something he never thought he'd see out the large window. "Right," he said as he started tapping away at the device. After a minute he said, "We need to go straight ahead." Harry nodded and started moving them forward. As they approached what looked like glass shards all moving and melding in and out of each other, both connected and not, Harry asked, "You'll have to explain to me what I'm seeing, Hank. Should I go through this or try to find a way around?" "We'll have to punch through," Hank said. "After this we may travel through some sort of distortion before we get to where Janet is, hopefully." "What do you mean hopefully?" Tony asked. "Nobody's ever been to the quantum realm and returned with memories of the event." Hank defended himself. "I'm working off what my research was able to provide me. I spent 10 years working on finding a way to the quantum realm, and even I don't know everything." He turned to Harry. "How long have you been working on this? Shouldn't you know more than me, considering you're the one who figured it out?" "Actually, a friend of mine kind of gave me a hint." Harry said, "I don't know the first thing about this place." Tony snorted from his spot. "Harry's no scientist. If anything, he's the opposite." "Hey," Harry objected. "No offense, Harry, but you know I'm right," Tony said as he closed his eyes and shook his head. "Is anyone else feeling this?" Scott had been strangely quiet as he stared out the window with a dull look on his face. "Can't focus," he said. "We'd better hurry." Hank said, "I don't know if this will work if he loses consciousness." Harry punched it and they soon entered some sort of prismatic area before breaking though to a location of strangeness Harry could not explain. It was chaotic but also with a strange form and function. They soon arrived in an area where a large interconnected mass of multicolored, something stretched as far as the eye could see. Hank was still pointing their direction, but Harry could tell he was fading fast. Bruce still had a look of concentration on his face, as did Tony. Hope was also hanging in there, but barely. If Hank became unable to focus, it would have to be Bruce to take over. It seemed that the occlumency was helping though. Tony, who hadn't been such a strict follower of the mental art, was struggling a bit, but he was holding himself together with a small amount of effort. Jarvis seemed as calm as ever, and Harry nodded at him when he noted him checking the others as well. He continued on until they found a place where Harry thought he could at least have them hover if not put the ship down. Hank was looking at the device. "She's here somewhere, we just have to find her." Harry nodded and got up out of his seat. He spread his hands and willed the entirety of the ship to become see-through and started looking around them. The strangeness of the place was beyond description. Where moving objects touched each other, spikes of reaction shot up out of the ground like the opposite of impacts. Everything in this place moved and seemed alive and constantly changing. Harry wondered how a person could have survived in such a chaotic-seeming place. He could feel the effect of the realm trying and failing to enter his mind. It seemed to be random too, so he ignored it and continued to look around. It took him a moment to realize something. "She won't know we're here, we need to send a message." Harry went back to his seat and lowered them until they made rather solid contact with the structure of the construct. Harry lifted them and dropped them over and over in a strict repeating pattern, watching as wave after wave of spikes flew out in cascading waves from their point of origin. "Good idea," Jarvis said. "If Miss Van Dyne knows what is abnormal here, she'll see the measured beats of our contact and know to look." "Can you hit the horn?" Bruce asked. Harry thought about it for only a second before he pressed a button and the hooter went off. Then he turned to Jarvis. "Take over the hooter while I fly." Jarvis nodded and started honking 3 short honks followed by 3 long ones over and over. SOS in Morse code. Hank nodded in appreciation. "Come on, Janet, we're right here, where are you?" he whispered to himself. Another minute passed and then Tony suddenly shouted, "There!" pointing at one of the monitors which was showing behind them. Sure enough, there was a figure approaching. Harry turned around and saw the figure as it approached. Harry didn't have a doubt even though the person was covered in some sort of rags. He lifted a hand when they were close enough and formed a bubble around the person, and then levitated them, and some of the substance of the ground, to the door. Once the door was completely covered by the bubble, Harry opened it and brought the person inside, while simultaneously putting the quantum matter into a storage unit that was runed and enchanted 7 ways from Sunday and inlaid with vibranium, just in case. Then he took them a bit away from any moving structures and had the ship hover in place. Janet had seen many strange things in the quantum realm over the years, but the strangest was when she went to check a strange occurrence and saw a car, bouncing up and down and honking SOS. She knew Hank would be along at some point, but didn't think he could have received her message yet or arranged for a way to get to her so quickly. She had been feeling the connection get stronger and had wondered if the young man she had briefly seen had gotten himself stuck in the quantum realm again. When she approached the car, it stopped bouncing, spun around and approached her. She did not know what to think when suddenly she was surrounded by a bubble of force energy of some sort, and then she was lifted and being brought to the car. She considered escaping but didn't know if she'd be able. This was all new to her. When the door opened and she saw a much larger room on the inside with Hank and a couple of other people inside, she finally relaxed and allowed the force to deposit her gently on the floor. Then she approached her husband and took off her protection so that he could see her too. "Janet Van Dyne, I presume?" Harry asked with a smile. "I am her," Janet responded. "Good, could you please take a seat?" Harry asked. "We're about to get out of here." Janet nodded and sat in the nearest chair, which just so happened to be next to Hank. Harry took off and pointed them back to the void where they had started. He had to avoid some strange outcroppings that seemed to follow them, and then broke through the same barrier through which they had entered. Once they were in the void again, he decided to move them to outside the hangar, just in case they had any strange matter on the ship still. He didn't want to bring anything harmful into the base. The scientists would have to study and confirm that first. "Hold on, we're going in 3, 2, 1 now," Harry said as he performed the same function as before. The process was much the same if slightly faster. When they stopped, Harry was feeling slightly faint. "That took a bit more out of me than I thought it would." "Jarvis," Tony asked after shaking his head. "How you doing, buddy?" "I had much the same occurrence," Jarvis confirmed. "We should have known though, we knew this form of transport leaves certain energies behind." "Do I need to worry about my soul?" Scott asked, having apparently recovered from his mild stupor of before. "Nah, it's not like we deconstructed and reconstructed you," Tony said. "Teleportation is the one you need to worry about." "Excuse me," came the voice of the new arrival. "Could someone tell me what's going on?" "Oh, sorry about that," Harry said. "We sometimes get distracted." He got up and held out his hand to her. "My name is Harry Potter. These are my friends and colleagues, Bruce Banner, Tony Stark and Jarvis. We really need to get you a surname," he said, turning to Jarvis. "Stark," Tony said. "His full name is Jarvis Stark, my long-lost cousin." Harry smiled. "Fine. Jarvis Stark. Then we have Jenna Simmons and Leo Fitz at Mission Control," Harry said, pointing at one of the displays where their faces could still be seen. "Guys, please say hi to Janet Van Dyne." They greeted her and Harry continued. "This is our ship, affectionately called TARDIS. Don't worry about it, it's a popular culture reference," he explained. "We just traveled through a wormhole to come fetch you." Janet looked around at the smiling faces and nodded. Before saying, "Okay, just like that," Tony asked. "Okay, like this happens every day. Who would I be to argue? You showed up and got me out," Janet said. Harry started walking around and releasing people from their bindings, and Hank jumped up the moment he could to embrace his wife. Hope soon followed. "Well, this is touching, but we really need to get to decontamination," Harry said as he dug in a pocket for the elastic bands he had turned to portkeys earlier. He started handing them out. "We're leaving the ship out here. Please put the bands around your wrists." He waited until everyone had their bands secured before he activated all of them at once. There was no procedure for going to realms of chaos and probability, but when they mentioned it to Fury, he had people on it immediately. They needed to go through a slew of tests all at the moon base before they'd be allowed back on the planet. Hank made his objections known. But when everyone else just went with it, it didn't leave a lot of room for him to complain. After the tests all came back clean, even on Janet, who had been exposed for 27 years, it was deemed safe for people who returned to go directly to Earth, as long as any hazardous materials were left behind and a mental status was confirmed beforehand. At this point, Hank was grumpy but elated. Scott and Hope were openly holding hands, and Bruce and Tony had gone off to continue their own work. Fitz and Simmons had a lot of information to go through, including the full footage of the quantum realm to sift through. Harry had even left a memory for them to put in the records. Jarvis was standing with Harry, knowing what was coming next. "So, who needs a vacation?" Harry asked. At this point, it came as no surprise to anyone that Harry wanted to take them to the island. It didn't take a lot of effort even. Scott seemed keen immediately, and there was a lot of trust coming his way, even from Pym after Stark left anyway. "I suppose we should make time to catch up," Hank admitted. "I'd like that," Hope confirmed. "You have something in mind, I presume?" Janet asked. "I do," Harry said as he turned a portal into being. His ring was on his finger again and his power was restored, so he was feeling good as new. Dragging the ship, though apparition, while less painful, was infinitely more draining than doing it normally would have been. Janet wasn't shocked in the least and walked through before even Harry could. "Your power is impressive and well hidden," she said. "I didn't even realize you were the source until just now." "How do you know that?" Harry asked as he walked through after her, followed shortly by the rest of the group. "I'm not who I once was. I'm more connected now to the constant flow of power and change that happens around me," Janet said. "Not like you though. I'm like a conduit while you are like a nuclear power plant." "I don't know that that's how I would classify it," Harry said. "Yes. That description doesn't do him justice," a female voice said from off to the side. Wanda was walking up to them. Jarvis smiled and walked to her to give her a hug. "Hello, Wanda," he said. "How goes the hunt for a wand?" Wanda scowled. "Not great." Ever since the chaotic energy of Cthon had been driven from her and replaced with Harry's magic, she had found channeling her power was not more difficult but different. She had been practicing at it for a while now, after all. The problem was that she was trying to learn from the books, and a lot of what they taught she'd need a wand for. She could still perform pretty much all the same things she did before, but learning the magic from Harry's world would require a focus. They had tried all the wands Harry had collected over the years, but with no success. Harry knew what he'd have to do, but was loath to do it. When it came to wands, there was only one expert to be trusted. But that meant that Harry would have to bring him from the other side. In the meanwhile, the nymphs, who had decided she was one of them because of Harry's magic being so integrated in her, had been trying to suss out what kind of wood would work for her by having her try to channel magic through the trees on the island, while they felt for anything from the tree. Nothing had worked so far. If they didn't have any success in the near future, Harry would just have to suck it up and bring in the expert. "You'll get there. If you don't, we can do that other thing we discussed," Harry said. "Jarvis, if you would please handle the introductions." Then he walked to the bar to pour a couple of drinks for the guests, a shot of iced vodka and a tumbler with a bit of fire whiskey on the rocks for everyone. The weather on the island was always comfortable, but when the iced vodka became available, the magic of the island adjusted the temperature in the resort to be slightly warmer. Jarvis handled the introductions for Wanda and then led them to the bar, where he accepted the glass of butterbeer which Harry had poured for him. "Cheers," Harry said as he lifted the shot glass. The others toasted and downed their own shots. Janet had looked at her shot in contemplation before drinking it and had closed her eyes as if inspecting the resulting reaction. "Fascinating," she said. "It tests and then lowers the body's temperature by exactly 2 degrees. Harry nodded with a smile. "You are very perceptive. Did you note that it maintains the effect for a while? At the current rate, it should last about 15 minutes, Janet waged. "Just about," Harry confirmed. Hank, who had been watching the exchange and listening the whole time, decided to speak up. "You were the source Stark was talking about," Harry nodded. "Tony's not the man he used to be. He's honestly trying to better the world. That's why he helped found PI. "He's part of PI?" Hank asked. "I know you claimed that you were working together on projects, but you always identified him as being from Stark Industries." "A ruse," Wanda said. She had been hard to convince, but even she had started seeing the man as nothing of the monster she had seen him as while growing up. "As I understand it, Harry has a lot of ideas. Tony helps make them come true. And Bruce and Hank," Harry said, then turned to Pym. "McCoy, not you, although that might change in the future, hopefully. We'll have to see," Hank said as he lifted the drink to his lips. He took a small sip and his eyes widened as the burning sensation was replaced by a feeling of calm he had not known in years. "This is really good whiskey." The others, having not tasted it yet, tasted it as well. Scott, trying to show off, downed his and immediately started coughing up balls of smoke and fire before calming down. Is that normal? He wheezed. Harry smiled at him and took a sip from his own drink before producing the stream of fire he usually did when trying to impress guests. Fire whiskey, he said simply. Okay, I think we've waited long enough. Hank said, can you please just tell us how you're doing this? How is any of what happened today possible? You can't simply be an enhanced, you've shown too much variation in your abilities. Harry pulled out 4 contracts and handed them to the people. What is this? Non-disclosure. Hank started, but Harry just poured another glass for Scott and started chatting with Wanda. So how have you been faring? I'm doing better. Pietro has been spending more time with the X-Men, but he comes to the island every night. I think someone has caught his eye there, so I don't push. Wanda said, our memories. Hope exclaimed from her seat. I can't tell you how, Harry said as he turned to them, but yes, it is something that we can do. It sounds worse than it is, Wanda said. Once you sign, you can discuss what you know with others who know, but not anyone else. It is simply to keep the knowledge from the wrong hands. You'd know all about that, wouldn't you, Dr. Pym? Harry said with a smile. On the bright side, if you sign this contract, your secrets will be covered by the contract as well. Imagine people finding out about your particle but not being able to use the knowledge without your permission, or simply losing any memories thereof. Hank had to agree that that did sound like a good deal. Harry was shocked when Scott handed his signed contract back first. Instead of going over it over and over, he'd read, comprehended, and signed the contract quickly. He was no scientist, but he wasn't stupid either. Thanks for helping us, Harry, he said honestly. I trust you not to screw us, especially with the help you've already given us and me specifically. I'm being allowed visitation with Cassie now. Harry smiled as he shook the man's hand after taking the contract. It was my genuine pleasure to help you, Scott. You're a good man. The rest soon signed their contracts, and Harry looked through them before making them vanish with a snap of his fingers. He had noticed the nymphs lurking behind the tree line, waiting for the visitors to sign the contracts. Zira had been the one to recognize what they were doing upon approach and had made them hide first. Then he spread his arms wide and smiled while saying, "Welcome to New Atlantis." The nymphs took this as their cue to emerge from the foliage, and Harry stepped out of the bar dutifully to greet them. These are my nymphs. They take care of the island's plants as well as adding a lovely view for when I'm in the bar. You are most welcome, Zira said with a bow that may have been aimed at having her lord look down her cleavage. The island functions as a sanctuary for magical creatures, Harry said. If any creature here is hurt during your stay, you get to face its caretaker, Logan, otherwise known as Wolverine of the X-Men. Magical? Scott asked with a raised eyebrow. Magical, Harry confirmed, snapping his fingers and having everybody's drinks refill themselves instantly. So what? Your Hope started. Say magician and I'm turning you into a donkey, Harry warned, interrupting her. I'm a wizard, damn it. Magician, Scott finished for her. Suddenly he was replaced by a very bewildered-looking donkey. Don't test him, Wanda said matter-of-factly. I once saw him turn Stark into a desk lamp on a dare. It was only for a couple of minutes. Harry defended himself. Human to inanimate object transfiguration was considered a form of torture back in my own world. Imagine trying to breathe only to discover you don't have lungs. Wanda winced and the donkey started hyperventilating. Until Harry reverted the change. You're a wizard, he screamed like it would undo the fact that he had said differently earlier. Next time you won't do that, Jarvis said easily. I remember being a desk appliance. It's not pleasant to think about these days, though I didn't know better then. So magic is real? Hank asked. Harry wasn't looking at him though. He was looking at Janet, who still wore the same smile as before. You knew, he asked. I wouldn't have called it magic. But it amounts to the same thing. Janet replied. What would you have called it? Harry asked. Energy manipulation. Janet replied. What kind though? Harry asked with a smile. For a second there he thought she was going to say he uses quantum forces. I can't honestly say. There's definitely some quantum energy in there, but that's only part of it, Janet conceded. Magic encompasses the entire energy spectrum, Jarvis said. Apparently it functions like a wave and a particle. We have been able to work with and confirm those facts when Harry manifests something by using magic to create matter, even though conjuration is considered a temporary thing. Can you show us? Scott asked excitedly. Harry waved his hand and a bowl of fries appeared in front of Scott. When Scott just looked at it, Harry said, "Go ahead, they're fresh." Then he winked at the man who laughed and took a fry and stuck it in his mouth. It's real, Scott said, offering the bowl to the rest who tasted the conjured food. And this is only temporary? Yup, Harry said. As I understand it, by eating that you're burning calories because your body spends energy trying to ingest the food, Jarvis said. But it can't sustain you, so I usually only use that for snacking, Harry said. Then he turned to Hank. So, are you interested in making the world a better place? That evening, a lot of subjects were discussed, with Hank Pym deciding to come out of retirement to investigate the possibilities between his research and what Harry brought to the table. Magically augmenting his process might see much better results in both shrinking and growing. Besides that, there were so many possibilities if they could find a way to enter the quantum realm and not have to be strapped in. Jarvis, who was in charge of tracking which of Harry's books were where, had taken the liberty of adding Hank to the waiting list for the Occlumency book. Jarvis had wanted to digitize the entire collection, but Harry couldn't see that ending well, so he allowed physical copies to be made only. Something he could enchant to be kept safe. They had yet to find a way to enchant data, and until Tony's new computing technology became more widespread, would not be adding that to his list of priorities. It would be years before the HG CPU and Stark Quantum OS became available commercially. Stark had the base operating system up and running, but was constantly fiddling with it to improve performance. Said performance was currently outstripping all known computing technology many times over. Tony had said something about being able to decrypt the toughest encryption in days rather than years. Harry believed him even if he didn't understand it. Suffice it to say, Friday was the first AI to be loaded on a quantum server, and she had started outperforming her previous iteration instantly. That didn't affect the amount of work available to her, but it left her with more time to focus her attention on predictive algorithms to predict market trends, and as a result, Stark Industries was making a hefty sum in the stock trade. Wanda had contacted Harry a couple of days later when she had struck out in the search for a wand, and Harry decided that he needed to summon the spirit of Ollivander himself. Harry had gone to his house and asked Wanda to wait outside while he contacted someone. Once inside, Harry reinforced his occlumency before calling for Ollivander. "Greetings, Mr. Potter," the voice said from right behind him, making him jump again. "Why do you insist on scaring people?" Harry complained before looking at the man warily. "What other fun do you think an old man like myself had, spending his retirement years sitting in a dusty wand shop, waiting for an influx of children every year, only to spend the rest of the year making new wands that I had no idea if they would find their wizard?" Ollivander said. "Good point, I suppose." Harry conceded. "It's good to see you, Mr. Ollivander. How's the afterlife treating you?" "Fairly," Ollivander said cryptically. Harry knew better than to expect more. "Fine. The reason I summoned you," he started. "You need my expertise with wand lore, correct?" Ollivander smirked at Harry when he looked up in surprise. "Come now, you didn't expect me to think you summoned me for anything else, did you? Or were you interested in my family pancake recipe?" "Good point," Harry said again. "Fine, follow me." Then he led the spirit from his house and to the bar where Wanda was waiting, sipping from a glass of butter beer. "Wanda, this is Mr. Ollivander. Ollivander, this is Wanda Maximoff. She's the only true witch I know of in this realm, and she needs a focus for learning our kind of magic. Do you think the two of you could spend a couple of hours on that?" Ollivander nodded. "If she is the first witch of the kind we knew of, then she is surely the start of a movement towards the magical. I will instruct her in my craft so that she can pass the knowledge on to the next generation." "Thanks, Mr. Ollivander," Harry said. "You may call me Garrick." "Mr. Potter, you earned that right many years ago when you rescued me from Voldemort," Ollivander said. "Indeed, it's for that reason that I will impart my knowledge to this young witch." Then he started walking to where he saw the greenhouses. "Come, Miss Maximoff. We shall need to spend some time among the plants and trees where you can open your mind and feel the pull of nature as it communes. I'll be here when you are ready to go," Harry said. Ollivander nodded at him and led Wanda off. Wanda POV when they were out of earshot of Harry. Ollivander dropped the mysterious act. "Sorry about that, my dear. People expect a certain amount of mystery from their wand makers." He smiled at her. "The fact of the matter is there is quite a bit to know about wands, but the important bit to know is that it's all quite logical. Every magical being has a frequency to them, be it a plant or a creature or a person." "Frequency, like radio or something?" Wanda asked. "Radio? Oh, that's right, you'd be muggle raised." "Even better," Ollivander enthused. "If you were magically raised, it may have been more difficult to teach you this." Then he nodded as he continued. "That's right, much like radio, everything magical has a frequency. The job of a wand maker is to find the parts that have similar frequencies and to see if you can have them work together. You know of the subjects in the study of magic, right? Like transfiguration and enchanting?" Wanda asked. "Each kind of magic has its own frequency as well. That's why some people are better at one kind of magic over another. Enchanting is a combination of fields and would therefore have multiple frequencies, so there would be no one wand that lends itself to that field specifically." Ollivander explained. "What you need to know is how to feel the frequency." I tended to sneak up behind potential customers so that I may sample their frequency before proceeding to match them with something that was similar. It gave me a bit of a reputation as a scary old man, but it was all done with a purpose, I assure you. So I need to find something that is close to my frequency, Wanda asked. Not necessarily, Ollivander said with a sparkle in his eyes. There is one bit of wand lore that nobody but we wand makers know. He looked around as if to check if they'd be overheard. When you successfully make a wand and its frequencies work together well, it accepts its creator first and then only someone it finds worthy after that. Wands are alive, Wanda asked. Magic, Miss Maximoff, magic is alive. The wand has a bit of a personality because of the resulting frequency after it is made, but besides that it's as alive as a rock. Ollivander said, now let's start with how to feel frequencies. And just like that, Wanda started on the journey to becoming that world's first wand maker. She'd eventually figure out how to make wands to specification, but that would happen only years later when the need arose. It was a couple of weeks later that Harry received news that left him in a bad mood. Dr. Stephen Strange had turned up at one of the distribution centers, which doubled as homeless shelters and free clinics these days. He had demanded to see Bruce Banner when he wasn't immediately treated. He tried for a week, but when someone was sent to go discuss with him the specifics of his case, he had been told that there was nothing they could do for him at this time. Harry knew what that meant. He needed to be ready for what was about to come. He started spending more time in Asgard and was constantly keeping Heimdall company, playing board games and chatting about interesting happenings around the universe. Harry wanted to know the moment anything happened. Unfortunately, his duties got in his way. Secretary of State Thaddeus Ross was pushing for a Superhero Registration Act. Harry and Tony showed up with a litany of lawyers including, but not limited to, the human lie detector, Matt Murdock. When Harry heard about his ability to detect a lie, just by the tone of voice a person used, he had to have him on his payroll. He did not suspect anything about his nighttime activities but found it strange that he refused glasses that might give him his sight back. Apparently he liked being blind. Harry didn't mind. He even increased his pay when he heard Murdock would take any case when it came to defending the disenfranchised. Tony had brought his own lawyers. Professor Charles Xavier and Jean Grey, who had been there for the last time a senator tried to push through laws that mutants had to register their powers. The Potter/Stark alliance was pushing really hard, and when push came to shove they won, but only barely. This isn't over, Tony warned as they left the building. Of course not, Harry said. Fortunately they forgot one very important fact. And that is, Tony asked, Epi, which is the Avengers' official sponsor, doesn't belong to any country. We don't answer to any jurisdiction. Harry said, they will still try to control us. Tony said, I bet they can't control me. Harry returned, leave this one to us. Xavier said as he caught up to them, we know how to handle this situation. We've been through it before after all. Are you sure? Harry asked. If you don't mind setting up some transport for Mr. Murdock and ourselves. Xavier smiled. I'm sure we can handle this, after all. What's the point of having so many friends if you try to handle everything on your own? I'll set up a service for Murdock. He's not in the know yet. Then Harry chuckled, feeling lighter already. I never was a fan of politics. Matt heard, of course, but assumed it had to do with the rumored expansion to transportation services PI was supposed to be revealing soon. Of course, Prince Harry. Tony joked. People could hear, but they'd just assume he was joking. Suddenly Charles jumped on Harry and they tumbled to the ground as something impacted the ground nearby. Sniper! Was shouted, and then there was chaos. Harry could see the look of concentration on Charles' face as he whispered, I've got him. Get your people to the top of that building. He was about to kill himself on orders. Harry nodded and cast a spell for privacy around them. It would add to the security for his friends as well. Then he apparated to the location, saw the man frozen with a capsule halfway to his mouth, vanished the pill and applied a stasis disc before sending him on to S.H.I.E.L.D. I took care of it, Harry whispered as he apparated back to his shielded area. Thanks for keeping him from killing himself. If he still wants to die later, that's his problem. I want answers first. Half an hour later, they had finally gotten to S.H.I.E.L.D. only to find the man had already been interrogated and confessed to being hired to kill Harry. Fury was in vengeance mode. All the ghost squads were deployed and given full authority to follow any leads to find the source of the hit order, since it was anonymous. 2 days later, one lead finally gave them what they wanted. Secretary Ross had much to answer for. As promised though, Harry let Charles and Jean handle the situation. Fury wasn't too happy but decided to trust Harry about this. He still doubled Harry's security detail, which meant that a decoy carrying Harry's face was now being seen doing many things with only enough security to look vulnerable. In fact, one ghost squad was permanently following the decoy and looking for assassins. What they had found when they looked for contracts on the elusive head of PI was a long list of people who wanted him alive for his technology and a few who wanted him dead, especially the transport, power, and telecommunications companies. Fury was having fun rounding up all sorts of information about said threats to Harry's life. When people started disappearing, only to reappear at law enforcement offices admitting to their various crimes, always mentioning first their attempt to have Harry kidnapped and slash or snuffed out, the list of people still willing to take out a contract dropped to 0. While that was going on, Harry was carrying on as normal, with Natasha demanding to have a silenced mirror on him so that she could see he was safe at all times. He didn't mind. Looking up and seeing her smile at him brought a smile to his face every time. She actually knew he was safe in his office. She just wanted to keep an eye on his mental state. She had noted that he had gotten distracted of late, like he was waiting for something horrible to happen. She didn't push him, but she knew better than to expect him to come to her on his own. She'd just be there and make sure he knew it. It took him another week before he broached the subject on his own. He had noticed her watching him and had finally realized she had noticed him waiting on word about Yao. When he told her and informed her of his plan, she had thought about it, added a couple of comments, and asked a couple of questions. After that, she was fine. He had a well-thought-out plan and didn't need backup for an observational role, especially with the tricks he had been working on lately. 3 months of waiting as he worked, and he finally received word from Yao to come for a visit. He was there in minutes. He apparated directly to her, having had spent a lot of time at all the sanctums, upgrading their wards and installing repairing enchantments to their more important structures, like the ones that contained the shields around the globe. He had needed to leave certain weaknesses in place or affect the timeline, which to Harry meant that some of the sanctums would not be surviving what was to come. For that purpose, he had purchased, warded, and enchanted new locations in the same cities, which he kept secret even from Yao. She might never see them in use, but they would be more secure than anything they had had in the past. They would need to use their own techniques to create the shields that they'd use, but he was pretty sure the sanctums would not be attacked easily once the monks had the new sanctums set up. Ancient One, Harry said as he allowed himself to become visible. "Ah, Master Ghost," Yao greeted him. "It is good of you to join us. As always, I'm at your disposal whenever you need of me," Harry said with a respectful bow, noting the man opposite her. Harry recognized him instantly, even though he looked very unkempt and downtrodden. Harry knew this man was going through a rough time and he'd have loved to help him, but he'd have to wait for when the time was right. Master Hamir has just shown Dr. Strange here that having working hands is not a prerequisite for casting spells, and your arrival has proven to him that there is more to the world than he has seen so far. Yao said, "Is his prosthetic not working anymore?" Harry asked, concerned. "The prosthetic is working fine, better even than his other hand, but that was hardly the point of the demonstration." Yao said, "Ghost is a sorcerer," Strange asked. "Ghost is not. His powers come from a different source." Yao said, "I have called him here as a demonstration of what can be done with perseverance. Master Ghost is one of the world's most powerful beings, being capable of great wonders, but even he started as an apprentice with less skill than you have now." "You flatter me, Ancient One," Harry said humbly. "Though my power is much different than that which you teach here, I too have had my struggles." Is his issue with focus or patience? I find those two to be the biggest hurdles with driven men. Their focus is on the wrong thing, or their patience runs out before they can achieve their goals. Yao gave her speech on how his ego was to blame for his failure to succeed. Harry nodded along and followed as she led Strange through a sling portal to Mount Everest. She quickly ducked back through the portal and made it disappear. "She can't just leave me here," Strange pleaded with him. Harry activated his armor and flew up. "She can and has, you must remember. She has trained those with more stubborn natures than yourself. Now you have a choice: surrender your ego, as she said, or let the mountain claim your life. You are smart enough to know which is more important." Then he made himself invisible. He quickly cast a couple of monitoring charms on the man and then silently returned to Yao. "You waited to add to my lesson?" Yao asked him. "I would not be so presumptuous," Harry replied. "I merely emphasized your point." Then he looked away and mumbled, "I may have added some charms so that I can ensure that he doesn't die." Yao smiled at him. "You are kind but wise. I am glad he will have you to lean upon when things become difficult." "Common sense is not the same as wisdom," Harry objected. They smiled at each other and continued chatting for a bit until Master Mordo walked up and asked, "How's our new recruit?" "We shall see any second now," Yao responded. "Oh no. Not again," Mordo said, looking genuinely worried. "Do not fear, Master Mordo," Harry said. "I have added my own protections. I will know if his life is in any imminent danger and have the ability to heal anything he suffers until then." "Of course, Master Ghost," Mordo said in relief. "We always appreciate your assistance." Harry and Mordo didn't really like each other. Harry felt the man's support of Yao was a bit too zealous. Much like many Death Eaters he had seen, that kind of fanaticism could turn so easily if a perceived slight happened. Mordo's reason for not liking Harry was because everyone knew he wasn't a sorcerer like them. Mordo may have also been slightly jealous about how seemingly easily Harry produced and enchanted prosthetics that worked for the intended person every time, very unlike their relics that chose their bearers. Even so, Mordo and Harry respected each other enough to be civil. Mordo even kept on sending glances at Harry. When Stephen didn't show up by the time he expected the man. He's still alive. The cold is getting to him though. If he doesn't return in the next 2 minutes, his core temperature would have dropped too low to remain conscious. Harry reported. Mordo and Yao both nodded. A minute later, a barely conscious Stephen Strange stepped through his very first sling portal. "Well done," Harry said. He waved his hand and the man's core temperature rose to the correct levels. "As a reward for your success, you get to keep all your toes," Harry smirked. He knew the man wasn't quite there yet, but a person who could barely feel their extremities could hardly tell. As Strange got himself off the floor, Harry cast another spell on him to calm his shaking. He looked at his hands in shock. "How did you do that?" he demanded. "My spell only lasts a short time, and I'm afraid it's not one you can learn, as my power is unique." Harry apologized. He felt bad as the hope that had suddenly shone in the man's eyes blinked out again. "If you prove yourself here, I might decide to try something more permanent, but that would be only at the discretion of the Ancient One. Perhaps later." Yao said he could still learn much with his affliction in place. "I'm never arguing with that. Pain teaches well. I once learned never to trust idiots when I had to regrow all the bones in my right arm." Harry joked. "It hurt more than many of my other injuries throughout my life combined." "Regrow?" Strange asked. Something like that was impossible, or at least it wasn't possible before he came to Camertage. "Is that something that can be done? How did you remove the bones that were there in the first place? What about the nerves?" "All questions for another time." Yao said, "You must rest now. If Master Ghost wishes to share that information with you at a later date, you can discuss it then. I'm not here all that often, but if you follow the instruction well and achieve mastery, I'll answer any question you have within reason." Harry said he knew the man's type. He'd be pushing himself to learn quickly anyway, so a little added incentive wasn't going to do any harm. When Stephen left, Harry waited until Mordo had somewhere to be before turning to Yao, but she held a hand up. "Don't ask, I can't tell you," she said instantly. "When it happens, it happens. I'm sure you have plans, but as I don't know about them yet. You don't apply them before my heart stops. Keep that in mind." Harry nodded. "Good luck, my friend. I'll be seeing you soon." Yao nodded and waited while Harry apparated out. Harry had plans to adjust. He stopped going to Heimdall, having realized that all the sanctums were still intact. Instead, he placed monitoring spells at all the sanctums. If one of them were attacked or destroyed, he'd know about it. Then he put it out of his mind as he worked on his super soldier program. He'd finally achieved a new form of enchantment, which linked other enchantments on items in a pocket dimension, which was connected to the inside of an adamantite armband he wore under his armor. With this in place, he'd been able to bring his game up to a new level, adding a couple of extra enchantments that he could summon at will. He was now able to do as Vision does by phasing through objects, though he had to be flying to do that one, otherwise he fell into the ground, and increasing his own density. He had noted that last one made him exponentially stronger and tougher, though the energy cost was high and it tired him physically. He couldn't wait to try that one in battle though. He was also able to add another, more intricate enchantment. Time dilation was now something he could do willingly to himself. Tony had explained the concept to him and he had obsessed about it until he cracked it. Apparently that was part of how Pietro's powers worked. The downside of the dilation effect was that it put strain on Harry's body. The human body was not meant to move that fast. Harry was working on creating a belt with some of the abilities for a lucky super soldier that just happened to be in the Avengers already, when one of the spells alerted him that the London Sanctum had fallen. It happened very quickly, and without warning, so Harry told Jarvis that he'd be on mission for an unknown amount of time, and to cover for him. He did put in an earpiece so that anyone that needed him could contact him. Then he donned his armor and disappeared. He arrived in London and quickly put the entire location under Fidelius. The fact that he could use the word Fidelius and quick in the same sentence had a lot to do with his power ring, as he'd started calling the ring with the connection to his massive, personal MSC shell. With the rubble hidden and forgotten, the panicking people soon started carrying on as normal. Harry searched for any life, and when he found none, he divested a large amount of magic to automatically repair the sanctum, physically at least. The spells for the shield and portal door would still be gone. Then he went to Nepal to the sanctum there where the majority of the order resided, including the Ancient One. It was not one of the sanctums adding to the shield, which Harry suspected was the reason why the students all stayed there. Less chance of being attacked. Harry found the portal room in shambles and all the doors broken. He then went to look for Yao. He found her hurrying to secure the students and a few injured who had been close by when the portal door exploded. Harry did not become visible as he knew he couldn't interfere this time, not until Yao was taken care of. He cast a monitoring spell on her and went to the other sanctums. Hong Kong was still standing, so he went to New York. Harry found Stephen fighting for his life and using his quick wits to shake his attackers. Harry saw the moment the cloak connected to him and saved his life. Twice. That was a useful item, but Harry would never completely trust a thing that thought for itself when you couldn't see where it kept its brain. Good advice from Mr. Weasley considering the Horcruxes. Harry saw him capture Caecilius. He would have to speak to him about talking to the bad guy, though. You only do that when you're stalling. Harry was unsurprised when Stephen was attacked from behind and kept his magic at the ready should his friend at the hospital fail to help him. He was sad when Strange was forced to kill the man attacking him, being able to watch them in astral form. Strange was a doctor after all. Harry was shocked at the revelation that Yao might be using some sort of dark power to maintain her youth, but put that aside as a matter for another time. He knew her character. She'd not have done something like that lightly. Harry was too close by when Strange transported them all into the mirror dimension when the fight resumed, so he had no choice but to follow them around. The strangeness of the place as the entire world was twisted beyond recognition before his eyes left his stomach slightly queasy as he followed them at a safe distance. When Yao turned up and started fighting them. After the revelation that she had in fact been using some sort of dark energy, he was impressed by her martial skill. She could probably teach Natasha a thing or two. Caecilius was a devious bastard though, and used one of his own disciples as a disposable tool when he stabbed her through them, before kicking her through a sling portal and to her apparent death. Harry's charm screamed at him that she was almost gone, but he had to wait for her heart to stop before he could do anything. He watched as Strange and Yao left the operating room in their astral forms and fast forward, but couldn't follow. A couple of moments later, her heart monitor indicated that she was dead. Harry activated one of the functions on his new ring instantly, dilating time to an almost standstill. Then he put Yao's body in stasis and transferred her to the island. He opened a portal and went to fetch the corpse he had prepared. Fury had asked some difficult questions again, but had agreed when Harry said it was a matter of life and death. Harry changed the corpse to look like Yao and gave it all the same wounds, before leaving the hospital to go bring Yao back from the brink of death. When he arrived on the island, he went to the hospital room which he had set up specifically for Yao. He was still in dilated time and moving felt like pushing himself through molasses, but he continued on as he knew every second counted, even if her body was suspended a second after death. He started healing the visible wound and found that there was an obstruction. The bastard must have left some malicious energy there, he thought. He used Loki's trick of flushing the area with power so that nothing else remained and then started healing again. This time it went much more easily. When her open wound was healed, he had to align the broken bones and hold them in place with magic so that they didn't splinter or puncture anything important. He knew the fall did more damage than he knew to fix, but his magic was the stuff of legend and he truly believed it could save her. Once everything seemed to be in place, Harry locked everything to stay in their respective position while allowing movement. Then he did what he was afraid to do. He removed the stasis field and dropped the time dilation. Her body sagged onto the bed but nothing else. Harry sent an enervate into her, still nothing. Damn it, Yao, breathe you fossil. He shouted, somehow feeling insulting her would work. He cast a diagnosis spell and found the issue. Her spine was not aligned correctly. Fox! The Firebird appeared next to him. Please do me a favor and give our friend here a couple of tears. She just stopped breathing a couple of seconds ago. Fox quickly jumped onto the bed and cried a tear onto her forehead. There was an angry spark of something dark and Harry realized the tear must have purified the mark from the dark dimension. When the next tear fell, Yao took a long, deep breath suddenly and then started breathing normally. She was not awake though. It was probably a blessing as a spine healing was a painful process. So you ended up saving me. Yao's astral form asked from just above her body where she had suddenly coalesced. How could I not? You're my friend. Harry said as he leaned down to pet Fox in gratitude. Thanks buddy, you're literally a lifesaver. He is magnificent. Yao agreed. So what do I do now? I'm assuming we're on the island. We are, Harry said before looking at her worriedly. Should I worry about Strange? He makes it through this encounter. I have some knowledge from the future past today but it is very limited. I know he lives and that will have to be my solace for now. Yao said, how did you receive this knowledge? Harry asked. Yao just smiled at him. Really, I had hoped you'd stop being so damn mysterious. Even if I was not the Ancient One, I am still a woman, Yao said. She reached up and touched her forehead. A mortal one now, it seems. Maybe not for long, Harry argued. My people are doing some good work with alchemy. I've no doubt that one day soon we'll have access to many different kinds of life-saving options. I think I'd like to be mortal, Yao argued. Life is not meant to be extended indefinitely, not all life anyway. She smirked at him. You should know that, Master of Death. I don't have an instruction manual for that one, Harry said. Then he stood up as he felt another ping. Rest for a bit, I need to go. I can feel something happening outside the Hong Kong sanctum. Please be careful to not be seen. This confrontation is needed for Strange to take the first steps toward who he will become. Yao pleaded. Harry nodded and turned invisible before apparating away. Upon arriving at the Hong Kong branch, Harry noted all the chaos following the fall of a skyscraper in the center of the city. There was no way he could leave things as is. He felt the people's fear and pain. He was about to start acting, when he felt a presence he'd never felt before as the dark dimension started spilling into Earth. That's when Strange arrived with Mordo. When Strange started channeling the artifact Harry had first noted with Yao all that time back, he looked down at his arm wondering if he'd somehow started the time dilation only to realize it wasn't his doing. The artifact obviously had control over time other than just viewing the possibilities of the future. What Harry was seeing was Strange sending the time of the entire world backwards. It would have been easier to simply travel back himself, but what Harry saw was time being erased, not having happened yet. He was not the expert, but thanked whatever was keeping him isolated from the effect. He watched everyone fighting while time still reversed upon itself as the skyscraper started lifting up and dead people were suddenly not dead yet. The dark dimension was being forced out of the realm as time relentlessly pressed it back to how it was before the sanctum fell. But then Caecilius released a shockwave of an attack and Strange lost concentration on the artifact. The reversal of time slowed to a crawl and then stopped. Harry watched as they faced each other again, but this time Strange decided to use a different tactic. He flew right into the dark dimension. Harry was torn between staying behind and following, but ended up following the man. Whatever he had planned was obviously more dangerous than the men fighting on the ground. The strange dimension of darkness was both beautiful and horrifying. There was no life here. Harry could feel the terrible void left by countless deaths as the creature responsible suddenly made himself known. Dormammu was a giant of an entity, and his power was, while not infinite, quite large. Larger than Harry's own, and that stored in his battery. He doubted it could survive a straight blast from all of the cannons on midnight, but a creature like this no doubt had some tricks up its sleeves as well. Harry had to make himself intangible when Dormammu started attacking and killing Strange over and over again. It was quite the trick, really. Strange was a smart man, being able to plan for and set that up on his flight over. Dormammu killed him over and over hundreds of times. Harry was starting to worry for his sanity, but Strange showed a strength of character Harry didn't know he possessed by constantly stepping up to be killed. Dormammu was obviously also waiting for him to break and becoming more and more desperate with every attempt, until finally he broke and conceded to Strange's bargain. Harry doubted it was the last the Earth had seen of the creature, but the Sorcerer Supreme would have the time he'd need to get ready. Once back on Earth, Harry watched as Caecilius and his people were sucked into their eternal torment. He shuddered to think of it. Strange finished his reversal of time and let it continue as normal again directly after. Harry was about to reveal himself when Mordo made his speech about how they had broken natural law and not being part of them anymore. Harry thought it was short-sighted, but that was what happened with zealots, he supposed. He cast a tracking charm on the man just in case. Strange and Wong made their way back towards the sanctum, and Harry decided to go with them. He'd wait for Strange to be alone before revealing himself. Harry saw Dr. Strange deposit the artifact back on its pedestal and then heard a very important term for the first time, Infinity Stone. Harry continued following until Strange was alone at the New York sanctum. That's when he revealed himself, sitting in a chair drinking a cup of conjured tea. You did well, Master Strange, Harry said. Strange straightened and turned. And where were you, Master Ghost? I was there, in an observatory capacity. Harry said. You could have made a difference. You could have saved lives. Strange accused. Harry let go of a sliver of his power. Strange didn't back down, but his face paled slightly. Don't ever mistake my inaction for apathy. I wanted to help countless times, but I was bound by my word not to take part in what happened. And who did you give your word to? Strange asked with a bit of suspicion. The Ancient One, Harry confirmed, before getting up and walking to Strange, looking him directly in the eye. Before today I wondered about you. You didn't seem the right choice, but the way you faced down Dormammu changed my mind. Harry put a hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry you had to die so many times. If I had interfered, it may have given Dormammu the leverage he needed to break free. Strange was shocked. You were there. I was. Harry nodded. And I promise you, Doctor, you will never have to fight alone again if I have any say in the matter. Strange thought about it for a moment before nodding. Then he smiled sadly. Did you hear? I'm a master now. Oh really? Harry asked. Did you get your secret decoder ring then? Strange just stared at him, knowing it was a joke and not allowing his humor to show. You promised me answers. Harry shrugged. Magic, he said simply. Magic? You are a sorcerer then? Strange asked. What you do is sorcery, what I do is magic. Harry said. You do know you're a sorcerer, right? You trade in the mystical while wizards trade in the magical. Strange felt like he was being talked down to. Why were you at Camertage then? He asked. The Sorcerer Supreme and I are friends. Harry said. Strange paled. Had Ghost not heard? I'm afraid I have some bad news. He said. No you don't, Harry argued. I said the Sorcerer Supreme and I are friends. One day that might even be you. He said. Besides, I have abilities that would normally allow me to speak to those who have crossed over, and no, he said as he saw Strange latch onto that statement. I do not summon the dead for just anyone and at any time. It is a privilege you may earn one day. Until then you will not repeat that to anyone. Why are you here? Strange asked. Harry smiled as his good humor returned. I have some gifts to give. Harry pointed a finger at Strange's watch and the cracked glass corrected itself. I have made some repairs and need you and Master Wong to come with me. Wong is in. Strange started, still looking at the memento from Christine. Yeah, I know, Harry said as he opened a portal to the library. Wong, if you could join us please, he called through it. Wong walked through. Master Ghost, you do know there's a rule against making portals in the library, right? That rule strictly applies to sling portals, Harry said. Now we have much to do, please follow me. He opened another portal and soon they were at the London Sanctum, not that Strange or Wong knew it. When Harry revealed the secret to Wong, his eyes widened in shock. How could we forget the London Sanctum? That would be my magic. Harry said. The London Sanctum fell, but I repaired it. You will need to re-establish the spells to protect the planet before I hide the Hong Kong Sanctum and the New York Sanctum. Only you two will have a way to inform their masters of the location. That should keep the locations safe from being found, from outside at least. Harry led them inside. I intend to have this entire place enchanted for safety. If a nuke goes off in London, this building will remain standing. We cannot have the sanctums fall again. Why didn't you set this up before? Strange asked. Same reason as I gave before. The Ancient One had knowledge about the future, which prevented me from setting this up. Harry answered. I have also purchased properties in all 3 cities where we will set up a backup location. Should one sanctum fall, we should have a secondary location ready to activate at a moment's notice. Harry led them to the disabled door and opened a portal which he connected between the locations again. There you go. Harry said. You can permanently dispel my portal once you want to put your own in place by simply willing it, while you are on the other side. Harry took out a scrap of paper and wrote the secret of the London Sanctum down on it before handing it to Wong. This is your responsibility. Once someone reads that, they'll be able to find the sanctum from the outside. Its only vulnerability is currently from this side, so make sure to protect it well. Maybe you should hide the Nexus as well. That way only trusted masters can have access to the different sanctums. Wong suggested. I don't see why not. But let's wait until all the sanctums are hidden first, okay? Harry asked. Then he turned to Strange. Are you ready for one last surprise? Hit me, Strange said. After what he had seen already, he didn't think he could be surprised. Harry smirked and knocked him out with a thought and a pointed finger, levitating him in place. Did the Ancient One tell you about him? Harry asked Wong. She said he had potential. Wong nodded. He could be the next Sorcerer Supreme. From what I saw today, she was right. Harry confirmed. Unfortunately, that means I have some information to give him that I cannot give to you. Wong nodded, long used to the Ancient One's mysterious ways. I will get the other masters together so that we can re-establish London's protections. He bowed to Harry. Thank you for your help, Master Ghost. You may call me Harry when we're alone, you know. I know you remember me from when I first came here. Harry said as he smiled. And you're more than welcome, Master Wong. He took hold of Strange and activated a portkey to the island. When Strange awoke, it was to find himself slumped onto a bar counter, with an unknown bald gentleman sitting across from him on the other side of the bar. He nodded and lifted his drink in salute. Stephen looked around and saw he was on a tropical island with a pool surrounding them and various scantily clad ladies lounging about in and around the pool with strange-looking pointy-eared women mixed in. Where am I? He asked. You are on my island. Harry said. He was no longer wearing his armor and Strange looked at him in recognition. You're Harry Potter, owner and founder of PI and co-founder of EPI. Strange said, why am I here? Don't you recognize my voice? Harry asked. Strange thought about it before it snapped into place. Your ghost, he asked. Harry lifted a hand and flicked his finger, miming hitting something with it, and the sound of a bell chimed. Give the man a prize. Why would you decide to be a hero if you're saving more lives as yourself? Strange asked. Harry smiled. There are many things I'd like to tell you, but on this island there are many things you may not know unless I protect other people's interest with one of these. Harry flicked a finger again and a contract appeared before Strange. Standard magically binding contract. You want answers, I want security. Deal. Strange looked at the contract before reading it quickly. He had the same hang-ups as everyone. My memories, to be fair. I could wipe your memories right now without your permission. On the other hand, if you sign the contract, I'd both have no reason to and wouldn't be allowed to, he said as he pointed to the section on the signer's protections. The contract protects you and your secrets as well. Stephen continued reading the contract until he grasped it in its entirety. Then he signed it. Better the option where he has more control in his opinion. Harry smiled and made the contract disappear. Lovely, he said. Then he took out 2 potion vials and put them in front of Strange. The red potion doesn't taste so bad and it mostly tingles as it works. It repairs your nerves. The white one burns as it goes down and tastes downright nasty. It will fix your bones. The process will hurt quite a lot. I suggest the white one first and then the red one the next day. What if I've got metal pins in my hands? Strange asked. That's a good question. I honestly don't know. Harry thought about it for a second. It would probably be best for me to vanish the bones and pins then. You can do that without operating? Strange asked in wonder. Yeah, sure. Harry shrugged. Magic is capable of a lot of awesome things. He pulled out a pair of glasses he had enchanted for X-ray. Try these on. I don't need glasses, Strange said before noting the look in Harry's eye and the raised eyebrow. He reluctantly picked up the glasses and put them on, only to be shocked at seeing through Harry's skin. He could see the arteries and nerves. He could see the eyeballs and the retina connected to the optic nerves. This is amazing. Is it bathing you in radiation to show me this? It's magic, Stephen, Harry said. It sees through things. They are called X-ray specs after all. I don't think you know how X-rays work, Stephen said while looking at his own hands. He had to admit the doctors did a good job even if there were things he would have done differently. This is amazing though. Could you make me a pair? He asked. You can keep those as long as you promise not to use them for anything lewd. Harry said he knew it was impossible to do lewd things with them, but he had to say it on principle. First, do no harm, Strange recited. Why are you helping us so much? Because it's what I do. Harry said, I also want to offer you a job. As he said it, he pulled a scalpel from his inner pocket. He placed his hand on the table and stabbed the scalpel into his flesh. Strange jumped up, thinking of where he'd find the required equipment to fix the madman's hand. Then he noticed it wasn't bleeding. He stepped forward and looked as Harry wiggled the scalpel, and Strange could clearly see it, with the X-ray specks passing through his hand not harming it. It's an illusion. No, it's not. The blade of the scalpel is currently out of phase with this dimension. Harry retracted the blade and lifted it up for Strange to see. He pointed at the base, where he had a bar running across the handle. He shifted it like one would a Stanley blade. This is an adamantium scalpel with a phasing function built in. The bar on the side allows you to integrate the edge back into sync with our reality. Are you saying you can use that blade with these glasses to perform surgery all while never needing to open the patient up? Strange asked. That's exactly what I'm saying, Harry said. Now I know you're a busy man, but with my resources at the disposal of Camertage and my protections on the Sancta Sanctorum, you may find yourself able to do both jobs. Add to that the fact that I can put patients in a state of suspended animation before, during and after surgery, and you need not ever lose another patient again, while taking all the patients you could ever want to. Stephen was very tempted. He took the offered scalpel and touched the edge, which was currently in phase. He slid the slider up and the blade lost contact with him from the base up. Quite ingenious. Did you invent this? Wish I could say I did. Harry said, my friend Jarvis came up with the idea and implemented it using a form of rune magic I taught him. I thought you said your power was unique, Stephen asked. It is, Harry confirmed. Jarvis uses a machine I helped create that gathers and stores my kind of magic. He then uses that device to power magic runes. Stephen was still staring at the blade before he took the glasses off and slid them back across the table with the scalpel. Your offer is tempting, but I have other responsibilities now. The man across from them nodded and started clapping before the glamour faded to reveal the face of the Ancient One. Well done, Dr. Strange, she said. Ancient One, you're alive, Stephen asked. Or are you something that Master Ghost is projecting? She looked bemused for a moment. I suppose he could do that if he wanted to, she said, looking at Harry, who snapped his fingers and two more Yao appeared, both clapping hands before disappearing again. Yes, he could, but I assure you I am very much alive, thanks in no small measure to Harry. And Fawkes, Harry said instantly. When Fawkes appeared, he ignored Strange's outcry of shock and scratched the bird the way he liked. Fawkes seemed to be doing lots better these days. He moped around less and spent time on Atlantis flying about the magical realm Harry had created. Of course, Yao said, walking around to scratch the magnificent bird. Who could forget the phoenix who saved both my life and my soul? The connection to the dark dimension was gone and she hadn't felt so light in many years. Phoenix soul? Strange asked. Wait, how are you alive? I saw your body, you were dead. Yao smiled from where she was still scratching her ultimate savior. Harry would need to explain the body, but the phoenix is a bird of utter purity and its tears can heal most any wound. It was able to sever my connection to the dark dimension and its energies. Why did you have that connection to begin with? Strange asked. You will soon learn that you will need to exploit your enemy's weaknesses to prevail against them. Yao said. When I was young, I was placed in a position with an impossible choice. I ended up choosing the one where less innocents died, but I had to sacrifice my soul. Until today, Harry said. Until today, Yao nodded. This would also explain why I could not see past this point. My power was too fundamentally changed. So long has the dark dimension sustained me that it suffused my own power. So you can come back to Camertage? Strange asked with some hope. Yao's face fell slightly. I'm afraid I cannot. Why? Strange asked. Your destiny does not include me. Yao said. I can make you much the same offer I made Harry here more than 4 years ago. You may seek me out in this place and I will be here to tell you that you are doing as you must. Even if I cannot lighten your burden or give you information that would change the things you do, I could still confirm you are on the right path, simply by not pointing out your mistakes. Stephen would have preferred that she came back, but wouldn't begrudge her the opportunity to rest. She was ancient after all. Then a thought occurred to him. I can't tell anyone about you, can I? Yao shook her head. I'm afraid not. Your future rests within your own hands and I no longer have a path to walk among those of Camertage. What will you do now? Strange asked. I was thinking of enjoying a bit of sun and resting. Yao said with a smile. It has been many hundreds of years since I last had a holiday. Then she looked Strange in the eyes. Don't follow my example and forget to live, just because the weight of the world lies upon your shoulders. No pressure or anything. Strange mumbled. Oh, relax and have a drink. Harry said, passing him a fire whiskey. After battle my people often come here for a drink and some relaxation. At some point in the future those of Camertage may come here as well. We don't want our time and dimension protecting mystic monks to overwork themselves after all. I'm not sure we're allowed alcohol, Strange said as he watched Yao take a sip of her own drink. Not normally, not while you're on duty at least. Yao said. Fortunately for you we have a wizard in attendance. He can dispel the effects of alcohol straight from your system. One drink won't kill you either. Strange was astounded. I didn't think you were the type to indulge. I wasn't always a monk, you know, Yao said with a smirk. She'd heard that line in a movie once. Strange shrugged and took a sip of the drink, nearly coughing and then slumping in his seat as the effect hit him. This stuff must be magic, he exclaimed. No antidepressant works that fast. Fire whiskey, Harry nodded. If done right you can blow fire after a sip. No thanks, Strange said easily. I think I'll just enjoy this. So, Ancient One, what did you have in mind for after your holiday? Harry asked. I hadn't considered it honestly, Yao said. Well, I saw you fighting and I can easily see you as a martial arts instructor, Harry said. Did I ever tell you about my room of requirements? I think you may have mentioned a room by that description in passing once or twice, Yao said with a smile. Well, I had this idea, Harry started. By the next week Yao would be stopping by the respective branches to set up ART rooms with her skills to train EPI's people. Harry could not have hoped for a better instructor than the 1,000-year-old monk. The fact that all his people were able to learn from her was just a bonus. Yao settled into a routine of reading and exploration. A peaceful life like she had not known in a long time, and Harry was happy he could supply her with that. She had a house, a bit away from the rest but close enough to be considered included when the inevitable party broke out. Within a couple of weeks, most of the inhabitants of the island considered her a friend, and her calm and peaceful nature drew them to her whenever they were feeling vulnerable and in need of support. Her name on the island soon changed from Ancient One to Island Mother, and she couldn't be happier. Harry suspected the nymphs had done that when they saw how much respect he showed the woman. Neither of them complained. Frigga might though when she found out. It was a couple of weeks later when Tony called Harry over to his office to watch a video he had found online. "Did you see that? The kid just caught a car with his bare hands," Tony said excitedly. He showed Harry another video of the kid swinging around. "I had someone pick up some of the remaining webbing. The strength of this stuff is amazing. Why do you call him kid?" Harry asked as he looked at the site. It clearly referred to him as Spider-Man. "I may have worked out who he is," Tony said. "How old is he?" Harry asked. "Not old enough to be out of school yet, but old enough to want to help people." Tony said. "I don't know, Tony," Harry said. "We're supposed to be responsible adults here, and we both know what we do given powers even at school age," Tony said with a pointed look. Harry thought about it. "Fine, but this one's your baby. I've brought enough enhanced in. If you're bringing in the kid, you're responsible and you're giving him the protections he'll need. Could you just..." Tony started. Harry dug in his drawer and removed an Avengers armband. He changed it to have the Avengers logo, but with the word trainee over it. "One-time use portkey to the EPI infirmary." He tossed it to Tony. "Activation is emergency port out." "Thanks, Harry," Tony said. He was excited. The kid promised to be a smart one. His grades were understated but drew the picture of someone who was holding back to fit in. High school must be difficult for someone like him. Maybe Tony can get him a scholarship to somewhere more suited to his speed. "Don't thank me yet," Harry said with a smirk as he tossed over another identical bracelet. "You're the one that has to inform Fury why there's a replacement Avengers trainee bracelet waiting for the kid for when he uses the other one." Tony groaned. "Maybe I should just not tell him." Harry laughed at him and continued his work. Steve's belt was almost done. Making pocket dimensions without runes was a relatively new enchantment for him, but even though it took longer and more energy, he preferred it over the runes he'd had to use before. Sure, the pocket dimensions he could make this way weren't nearly as big, but enchantments could keep working in space without a constant feed of energy, and he didn't want to strand any of his people because a pocket dimension stopped being available. Harry would open the pockets as Steve learned to use the powers, first being flight, then time dilation. Only time would tell if he'd be able to learn to use both at once like Harry could. There were one or two other features as well, but Harry reserved the right to tell Steve about those. Some of the things he added, Steve wouldn't need yet. Harry finished the belt the next day and excitedly went in search of the symbol of American goodness. He found Steve in the gym, hitting a sandbag which had been spelled to repair itself and become heavier, depending on the amount of force applied to them. Steve loved it as he didn't need to keep replacing the bags constantly. This one was his personal one too, which would randomly spawn targets in the bag for him to hit. "Hey, Steve, how are you this fine morning?" Harry said with a smile. "Somehow I'm worried when you smile like that." Steve joked. "I'm doing fine, thanks you." "Oh, I'm just peaky," Harry said. "Want to help me with an experiment?" Steve really did not like that look. "Seriously, why am I afraid?" he asked. "Oh, don't be afraid, silly. We're upgrading you is all," Harry said. Then he turned a portal into being and walked through. At first, Steve thought he saw the island, but once he was through, he realized they were in a desert. "So what's the upgrade that needs this much open space?" Steve asked. Harry presented him with the belt. "Put it on," he instructed. Steve started removing his current belt, but Harry stopped him. "This one needs contact with your skin," he said. Steve shrugged and tied the belt around his waist and lifted his shirt over it. Harry had already bound the belt to him when he started handling it. He didn't even need physical contact these days. The moment it was in contact with his skin, it disappeared. "Did it just become part of me?" Steve asked. "It's an enchantment. You can make it visible with a bit of willpower," Harry said as he cast a couple of spells to check if the belt's enchantments were working as they should. "Everything seems to be in order," he reported. "First test," he said as he lifted up into the air. "Direct your will to the belt and try to lift up." Steve concentrated, and Harry was impressed when Steve lifted up steadily until he was level with Harry. "Did you give me a belt of flying?" Steve asked with excitement in his eyes. "I sure did, Steve, I sure did," Harry confirmed, still smiling ear to ear. "The reason we're here is to train you in its use. Like with carpets and brooms, there are two modes of operation." Harry started. That lesson would take 2 hours, and left Harry exhausted by the time it ended as Steve picked up on the concepts faster than Harry thought he would. It probably had something to do with Steve flying his skyline often. The finer control was still lacking, but he had no issues accelerating to maximum speed once he knew how, and Harry had to match him, just to continue the lesson as Steve looped and swerved. He was almost a natural. Except for the couple of times he underestimated his speed and careened into the soft sand. At the speed he was going, a normal person would be dead, but Harry had added some protection to the belt. He wasn't impervious, but a couple of small bumps and insects wouldn't bother him. The speed he was capable of achieving with the belt was not as fast as he could with his skyline, but that wasn't the point. The point was to give him a new tactical advantage. They went to the same stretch of desert the next day, and Harry taught him how to activate the belt's dilation field. Steve was able to activate the time dilation, but he struggled to move at his new perceived speed. It was as if his mind was the only thing that was faster. He could potentially react faster as well, but his body was still stuck in normal time. It was a disappointment to Harry when he realized that only he could push his physical body to move faster by using his magic to will his movements, but Steve didn't have magic flowing through his veins, so he had nothing to pull from. It seemed that Harry would be the only person who would be able to move faster with his dilation effect. "I'm sorry, Steve," Harry had said. "Sorry for what?" Steve asked honestly. "Extra time to think in battle is a resource people would kill for. I'll train with this and see if I can implement any new strategies by using the ability. You did very well on this, Harry." Harry was glad that Steve saw use for the feature, even if it didn't work for Steve like it did for himself. When Harry reported his perceived failure that night at dinner with Natasha, Tony and Pepper, Tony was the first to speak up. "Seriously, you actually got it working." "Yeah, but only I can use it like it's supposed to be used, see," he said as he activated his own dilation and moved behind Tony in the blink of an eye. Tony jumped but smiled. "That's awesome. Actual time manipulation on a living organism." "Old news," Harry said. "What do you mean? How did you figure it out?" Tony asked. "I ended up reversing what I do for the stasis field." Harry said, "The subject is exposed to more time rather than less over the same relative period. So a person is actually aging faster in that time too?" Tony asked. "Technically." Harry nodded. "Then it's more of a cheat than an advancement." Tony said sadly, "You ageless, powered people will be able to take advantage of it. But we normal folk could potentially lose our lives while going through a whole day in a second without food and water." He looked Harry straight in the eye. "You did make this one intent activated, right?" Harry nodded. "Yes, I didn't want people seeing when and how the power is activated." "That's good," Tony sighed. "Imagine a person's mind was the only thing that experienced the acceleration. Depending on the factor of dilation, they wouldn't be able to move fast enough to switch it off if it wasn't intent-based." "What factor of dilation did you set it to?" "It's all intent-based. The default starting setting is 2 times normal time, then it can be dialed up from there." Harry said he hadn't thought of that. If he had made a mistake, Steve may have died. Hopefully he's not been trying to use the item at an enhanced speed for too long. Wait, that won't happen. The enchantment limits the use since it's affecting a living organism. It would only be able to run for just over half an hour per day relative time at full charge. "That's at least good to know," Tony said. "In that case, maybe I can try one of those at some point. Let's rather follow the actual testing protocol set up by Fury's people." Natasha interrupted. "You remember he set that up for everyone's protection, right?" Pepper was nodding along. "While this is a wonderful invention, Harry, messing with people's time is probably something that needs testing on less important mortal beings first, like mice." Harry rolled his eyes. "I did follow procedure, thank you," he said. "I just didn't put it on the books as this is a private project. Once Steve is used to it and can train other people in the uses, I'll make limited versions of the same thing for select people from EPI." "You want to give normal humans the ability to fly?" Tony asked. "And phase, actually." Harry said. "I had another idea." "Brace yourselves, people," Tony muttered. He knew about the phasing. He had helped Harry figure that one out for the phase drive on midnight. Then he had started working on a rune set for the same effect. Harry narrowed his eyes at him for a second, then continued. "Imagine using PIMs shrinking with flight, phasing, X-ray glasses, stasis, and the scalpel. What do you see happening for surgeons?" Tony got it instantly. "Normally the scalpel will be enough, but with all those combined, you could potentially perform brain surgery with a way smaller risk of damage to the brain." Tony was nodding at the idea, and then his eyes shot open. "If your glasses can see tumors in the body, they could be cut out by a GP with no fear of it spreading. It won't be that simple." Harry said, "Cancer is a difficult thing. You couldn't just see it by looking at the body. You'd still have to have the cells tested. The possibilities are still huge with those things combined." Tony said, "I'm going to try and work on shrinking magic at some point." Harry said, "I doubt anything I do would affect physical strength and durability like Ant-Man, but the advantage at that size for detailed work could be a game changer in a couple of fields." Tony thought about that before arguing. Better to let Jarvis work with Pym on it. Before Harry could ask, he continued, "Jarvis can work with the runes and apply the magic directly from his PMMG. It would allow for them to test the possibilities of magic. While drawing on Pym's experience about miniaturization, he also still distrusts you, Natasha said to Tony. Because of my father, Tony said, can't blame the guy, my dad wasn't an example of the best humanity had to offer. He'll come around with enough exposure. Pepper said, once he spends enough time around Jarvis he'll probably see you in a new light considering you were the one that helped make him. He is quite likable, isn't he? Tony bragged. Jarvis was off taking a sunset flight on Logan's carpet with Wanda, who had been staying on the island with her brother. While Pietro tended to spend time with the X-Men at the Institute, he always returned at night. As Harry understood it, the children at the Institute have been begging for another visit to the island. Harry asked Logan to arrange it. Wanda seems to like him. Harry confirmed. Tony was about to object when Pepper gave him a look and a smile. Apparently they had had this conversation before. I'm not overprotective. He's just not used to everything human yet. Shouldn't he take some time to get to know what's out there and who he is? He's probably the smartest person on the planet with that quantum brain of his. Harry said, he might know himself better than you know yourself. Jarvis never operates at full capacity. Tony contradicted him. He was really serious about being human. That includes moments of stupidity, according to him. He scoffed. Let's consider his biggest influence for a moment, Natasha said with a smile at Tony. Oh haha, Tony said, if he's emulating anyone it's Mr. Wizard. He said before looking at Harry. Seriously, he's been getting more snarky these days. Have you been giving him classes? I see him as much as you do. We basically work in the same office, Tony. Harry said, actually you probably see him more since he lives here. Maybe he's just going through puberty. You can always ask him, Pepper said. Doesn't he control everything in his brain? He's been writing certain things into his subconscious. Tony said, he has access to it but doesn't want to go there as he wants the experience to be organic. I'm pretty sure that makes him the only one on the planet that wants to be more flawed. Harry joked, bless him for it though, if I met him on the street today I'd just think he was a friendly bloke. He's come a long way. Tony was nodding along. We should start planning a birthday for him. He was born 2 months ago, Natasha said. So, Tony asked. We can celebrate his birth then. Technically we're late by that logic. Harry just shook his head. Hey, so how's your arachnid project going? He asked. Oh, I'm enjoying setting the kid up. Tony enthused. I've got a whole rollout plan for him with systems that will advance as he learns. So you're setting him up with a bunch of tech? Pepper asked disapprovingly. Isn't he a school kid? He decided to start fighting crime on his own. He said that now that he has powers, when bad things happen and he does nothing, he feels like they are his fault. I'm just trying to give him what he'll need to live through it. Tony defended. Why don't you get him to train with Logan for a bit? Harry suggested. He loves kids and probably knows more about teaching them than you do. The kid's a tech whiz. Tony said. Logan wouldn't understand him like I do. You understand kids now? Pepper asked. When did that happen? Tennessee. Tony said while I was stuck in that kid's garage. Oh, you mean while Harry was being dragged off to Killian's base? Natasha said dangerously. That's in the past. What's important here is that I'm great with kids. Tony said that's one kid and you yourself told us that Harley helped you more than the other way around. Harry interjected. You know his name? Pepper asked. Tony kept on referring to him as the kid. I was half expecting a cowboy with a 6-shooter or a shotgun, Harry said. Jarvis told me his name when I asked. The kid, Tony insisted, is doing fine. I'm helping pay for his and his sister's school so that their mom can spend more time with them. It's true, Harry said. Tony calls him at least once every other week and asks what he's up to. Harley has started looking up to Tony like some sort of father figure, close as I can tell. Poor kid, must have no other option. Natasha joked. Hey, Tony objected. That was uncalled for. I'm sorry, Tony. Natasha apologized. I'm sure you make a wonderful absentee father. Tony glared but decided to change the subject. Either way, Peter's going to be fine. As long as he takes his time to train, the suit will be an asset to help keep him safe. Peter? Pepper asked. The Spider-Man, Peter Parker. Tony confirmed. Parker? Natasha asked suddenly. Yes, Tony confirmed. Have you heard of him? His parents were CIA. He's been on a SHIELD watch list all his life. Ever since his parents died in a suspicious plane crash. Natasha said as she got up and took out her phone. I need to report this. If he's an enhanced, there's a chance that he'll get himself in trouble if the wrong people find out. She walked away from the couch where they were sitting. Huh, you learn something new every day. Tony said. So, Harry asked. All tech and no runes. I did spend the vast majority of my life on tech development, Harry. Tony said. I'm not giving that up just because I can do other things. I do add my tech to everything I make now though. Makes sense. Harry said. Then he looked Tony straight in the eye. Just make sure to keep an eye on Peter. He's only 15. If he gets hurt doing what you enable him to do, you'll never forgive yourself. Tony nodded thoughtfully. You're right, I'll add some extra features just in case. Pepper latched onto that though. 15. like I said. Tony defended, I have no say in it. He's going to go out there anyway. Better to gear him up to protect himself, right? Don't worry, Pepper, I'll see about putting some charms on him at some point. Harry assured her he understood Peter's motivation. Hell, he'd been in the same boat at some point in his own life. First thing Tony did was get him a portkey. He's taking it seriously. Pepper didn't look happy but accepted it since Harry at least worked with kids quite often at the institute. Fine, was all she said. Natasha returned at that point. What did I miss? She asked. Nothing, we're still discussing Peter. Harry said, and that was really quick. I agree with Harry, you should send him to learn some strategy and teamwork with the X-Kids. They're going to the island this weekend after all. Natasha said, and Fury already knew, has known for months apparently. That's this weekend, Harry asked. Fury knowing didn't surprise him. You told Logan to arrange it. Natasha shrugged. Since when's he the type to put things off? He's already settled in the erumpance that he went to go pick up last week, so he probably decided to get the kids in for the long weekend. Oh right, Harry said. I'd forgotten about that. How'd it go? He had been so preoccupied with the super soldier belt that he seemed to have forgotten about what was going on with Logan and the island. He'd have to make time to catch up. He was almost certain Logan was tracking a group of Nifflers at some point as well. He wondered what happened to that. Logan was able to find one of each gender. According to your books, it becomes dangerous to have more than one male as they'll blow themselves up to attract a female. Natasha said, some of these creatures are just strange. Where's the self-preservation instinct with these things? How does blowing yourself up allow you to procreate? It's an accidental byproduct of the mating ritual. Harry said, they don't set out to kill themselves. But the female is attracted to the biggest display. They can normally survive a few explosions unless they get competitive. A lot of power and a dash of stupidity and suddenly you have whole herds blown to kingdom come. He shrugged. So it's all just male stupidity? Natasha asked. And explosions, Tony added like that explained it. I honestly feel bad for the creatures if their females were attracted to the smartest males, they'd be the dominant species. Pepper just rolled her eyes but smiled and kissed him anyway. If only there were more people interested in minds rather than power. Tony smiled back, unless you're lucky enough to have both. So what do you say? Harry asked. We can do a weekend with Peter, the Avengers, X-Men and kids, one big happy messed up family, yeah. Tony finished for him. How do we approach him? I've sent an invitation to Peter Parker for an intern orientation at Stark Industries this weekend. Friday said, have you been studying runes too? Harry asked the ceiling. Mr. Stark said I work too well to lose, so I have not been permitted access. Friday said easily, she wouldn't miss it because she didn't know it after all. After the Hydra AI issue, I've decided not to experiment with sentient AI systems anymore. Tony said, where'd you get the idea, Friday? It was an excuse you once used to get a lady's attention. Friday reported. But in that case you actually did start up an intern program that's still running today. Huh, Tony said, who knew? I didn't, Pepper said with narrowed eyes. She was looking at her engagement ring like she was reconsidering her options. It took a moment, but she lowered her hand and just looked overdramatically sad instead. But I did know who you used to be when I said yes. Tony hoped she didn't see the quick look of panic that flashed across his face. Natasha hadn't missed it if her knowing smirk was anything to go by. Oh, I forgot, we've got news, Harry said suddenly, looking at Natasha and smiling. Pepper perked up and her smile came back. It was one of two things if the way they were looking at each other was anything to go by. You set a date, she guessed. Natasha's own smile grew. We set a date, she confirmed. 30th of March 2018, that's 10 months, Pepper said. How are you going to have everything planned? Why will we need that much time? Harry asked, dumbfounded. Pepper looked at him like he was an idiot. Have you checked recently how many friends you have? Your friend list literally extends across multiple galaxies. Are all of them coming? Do they need special preparations so that they can attend? How will people arrive? Where will the ceremony and reception be held? Where will people sleep? You know what, I think those are all valid questions for Natasha and her maid of honor. Harry said, deflecting easily. Oh yes. Do you think Laura will need help arranging things from the farm? Pepper asked. Actually, I was hoping you could both be my maids of honor. Natasha asked. Pepper froze, then looked Natasha straight in the eyes. Really? She asked as her eyes started welling up. As long as you don't cry, Natasha countered. Of course I'll be your maid of honor, Pepper said as she jumped up and hugged Natasha. Then Pepper hugged Harry before running off to go find her tablet. You do realize she won't let you rest until she has a full accounting of what, where, when, why and how, right? Tony asked Natasha. I'm a spy, Tony. I come with escape routes pre-planned. Natasha smirked before she turned to the returning Pepper, who immediately started drilling her on specifics. Tony turned to look at Harry expectantly. Harry knew what he was waiting for, so did his best to ignore it. So I've been thinking of adding the density-increasing enchantment to Steve's belt, but I'm worried it will tire even him out. The added strength would be useful, but does he even need it? Tony was not answering and kept staring at Harry. What? Harry asked. I believe Mr. Stark is hoping Friday started. Shut it. Tony barked at the AI, who instantly stopped speaking. Then he continued his staring match. Harry couldn't help himself. So how do you think I should tell Bruce he's best man? While his delivery was spot on, he couldn't help the upturned corner of his mouth. Tony didn't fall for it, and Harry decided to relent. Fine, will you be my best man? Tony shot up and pulled Harry into a one-armed hug. It's high time you admitted it, he joked. Of course I'll be the best man. Then he turned on his heel and beckoned for Harry to follow. It's time for a cigar. Let's leave the ladies to talk wedding plans while we discuss something of infinitely more import, the bachelor's party. The quiet dinner turned into an impromptu planning session. Maybe a few too many drinks were had, but in the end everyone had a wonderful time while starting the plans for the much-awaited nuptials. When the weekend arrived, the first person to show up was Logan of all people. Much like they had done previously, they opened a portal to the Institute, and all those who would be attending for the weekend away walked through. When they were all gathered, Harry dialed a number he had never called before. Hello. The voice of a young man said from the other side. Mr. Parker, I presume, Harry asked with a smile on his lips. Yeah, I'm him, Peter confirmed. Did you receive the package last night? Harry asked. Yes, Peter said. What is this thing? He asked. Are you holding it right now? Harry asked mildly. Yes, Peter confirmed again. It's a portkey. Harry said. A what? Peter asked. A portkey. Harry enunciated. Portkey, Peter asked, unknowingly saying the word that activated the item he was looking at. Suddenly, he appeared in front of Harry. Yes, a portkey, Harry said, summoning it from Peter's hand. It also has a security feature that allows you to change into your outfit without people noticing it's you. You can have it back at the end of the weekend, since it can be activated one more time to take you home. What the heck just happened to me? Peter asked, having landed on his feet but suddenly in a ready position for combat. Welcome to New Atlantis, Peter Parker, also known as Spider-Man. Harry said. I'm not. Peter tried to start denying. My name is Harry Potter. Harry interrupted him. Like from P.I., Peter exclaimed, also known as Ghost of the Avengers. Harry finished. Ghost, Peter said, shocked. Ghost from the Avengers knows who I am. I know who he is. This is too much. All of us know who you are, kid, Tony said as he stepped up. Mr. Stark. Peter looked like he was going to hyperventilate. Well done. Instant recognition, Tony joked. Welcome to the Stark intern orientation weekend. Peter was dumbstruck, but only for a moment. He jumped away a split second before a gruff voice from behind him said, enough gawking, kid. Logan looked at him as he stood against a nearby tree horizontally. Nice reflexes. I believe he reacted before you moved to scare him. Xavier said, good reflexes indeed, bordering on precognition. What? Peter asked, suddenly realizing he was standing against the tree with many people watching and he was not in costume. Oh no, don't worry, kid, Logan said as he unsheathed his claws. Everyone here is an enhanced. Your secret is safe, though we will have you sign a contract like everyone else on the island has. It was true, even the children from the Institute had signed. It was deemed necessary as allegiances could change, even if people believed they would not. We'll get to that later, Harry said. Peter, meet Mr. Logan. He'll be your drill sergeant, camp counselor. He corrected quickly. Logan knew it was no accident. Okay, Mr. Parker, let's see if you live up to Richard and Mary's standards. He said. You knew my parents? Peter asked. Harry had also not known. Sure did, kid. They were fine agents. Your father was a tough one too. It was a terrible thing when they died. They actually rescued me once. Logan said. I was the first one to congratulate Mary on her pregnancy with you. Can you tell me about them? Peter asked. Can do, but you have to earn it, Logan said, knowing it would light a fire under the kid's ass. Sir, yes sir, Peter said with a passable salute and a cocky smile on his face. Go join the other kids and make some friends. There will be team exercises this weekend and you need to know who you're working with. Logan said. I suggest you go join her group, he said, pointing at an Asian girl. Noriko is a good team leader and she's smart as a whip. Peter nodded and hurried off. Why not tell him to join Peter's group? He's a good leader too, Scott asked. Colossus is a heavy hitter. He leads from the front. Logan said. Peter is also a heavy hitter, but we want him to know how to work with a team and follow commands, not just a leader. I also want him to engage his brain, not just his brawn. That skinny kid, Scott asked. That skinny kid can catch a speeding car and not break a sweat. Tony said. He's got the proportional strength of an actual spider. Scott whistled. There were many strength-based enhanced in the world. But with him being smart and with the powers of a spider, this kid had great potential. That's an impressive loadout. He said, "You've got that right," Tony said before turning to Scott. "I called dibs, no stealing my protege." Scott narrowed his eyes, something people could actually see now that he had PI made intent-based contact lenses. He could now fully control his power and see in color. It was technically the contacts with the control, but nobody could know that. Without being told, Jean was very happy, as was Scott for that matter. "Let the kid decide," he said with an unrepentant smile. Tony smirked too. He wasn't worried. Peter already looked up to him. He was sure the kid would rather join the Avengers anyway. Peter's a smart kid. He'll make the smart choice. Logan had gathered the kids together and some of the elf and nymph kids joined them. He gave them the same warnings as the last time. Then they were off with Logan running alongside them and Wanda following on the carpet. She'd volunteered to be the second this year as Darcy was unavailable, much to her regret. She still took every opportunity to visit the island, though her opportunities were becoming fewer and fewer. Speaking of Wanda, it had come as no surprise when she found part of her focus to be the very same sort as Harry's. Fawkes had had to donate a feather, but he didn't seem to mind at the time as it was close to his burning day. The wood for her wand was from one of the vine trees on Elfheim. She'd had to go exploring to find something that she could feel had a resonance with the phoenix feather. Once she had a focus, her training came much more easily, though she was making slow progress until Harry had used the room to summon facsimiles of his own teachers from Hogwarts, with his knowledge of spell casting. He would summon one instructor every second day, who would focus on one branch of magic all day long. Her off days were for practice and relaxation. He was sticking with the basics of Dada, transfiguration and charms. If she wanted subjects he didn't really study like astronomy, she could ask Tony to get her an online course or something. If she wanted to learn potions, Hank had gone through the course quickly and was planning on becoming an instructor for the subject, so that new people could be trained properly. If she wanted to learn runes, Jarvis could set her up with a tablet for the subject. She'd actually shown an interest in his own field, that of enchantment. He told her that she'd have to finish with her core subjects first as they all tied into it. Jarvis had decided to take on a whole new subject in his spare time, just for her. The subject of arithmancy was closely linked to spell creation. Its study was supposed to be as difficult or even more so than runes. Tony found no interest in it, since it wasn't something he could use. Jarvis, however, could attempt to create unique spells for Wanda. Harry had warned him to let him test them first, just in case. Spell creation was not something to play around with idly, especially for a novice like Wanda. Steve and Beast decided to join the kids as well, as it was a lovely morning on the resort. Little did they know the rest of the island was experiencing quite a bit of rain. It would clear up by the end of the day, but Logan had decided to leave the weather in place. It would toughen the kids up by his reckoning. After everyone had left, Harry took the remaining adult guests to the guest house, where he had modified the enchantments to allow only the person who opens a door to open it again, unless they specifically gave permission. The doors were also all different colors and patterns, set by the current mood of the person opening it. It was an easy spell, not even worth calling an enchantment by Harry's standards. This ensured that nobody entered each other's rooms accidentally. He really should have done that sooner. After everyone was settled, and since it was morning, the bar served juice and light snacks since people had already eaten breakfast. Jarvis' new pensive tablet was brought out and bound to Charles, who would still be the best person to use this with. The person sharing a memory had to place the tablet against their head, while the bound person willed it to extract a memory. There was even a little green indicator to show a memory had been completely extracted. For the rest of the functions, the tablet worked the same as normal, and it was a big hit just like before. Women tended to be more interested in special moments, but Charles thought he saw a future in having people relive the moment their powers activated, especially for those who struggled with control. If they could be made aware of the triggers, then they might be able to start learning how to use them willingly. When afternoon came, Logan called Harry on the mirror. "This rainstorm is becoming worse, not better, like it should have. Morale is getting low and I doubt everyone can hear me when I tell them to be careful. I think it's time you took control." "Will do," Harry said. He concentrated for a moment and then looked at the mirror. The rain was still pouring even if the wind had calmed down instantly. A couple of seconds later the rain simply stopped. "You could have kept a drizzle going," Logan complained. "The island doesn't need the water, and the children can still get sick," Harry argued. "I'll let it stay overcast for now. The sun will break through just before 4 p.m. Logan reluctantly agreed. He was still of the opinion that nature should have her way, but even he could admit that she could be a fickle and even downright vengeful bitch. "Fine, open the portal at 4 as well. We're already almost at camp. We should be by the third enclosure by then." "Will do," Harry agreed and closed the connection. when 4 p.m. rolled around. It was a bedraggled bunch of kids that walked through the portal. Harry quickly started pouring the butterbeer, non-alcoholic of course. The kids were enjoying it, but the idea of a long weekend on a tropical island with tropical storms as the forecast did not sound like fun to them. "What do you think?" Harry asked Logan, who seemed his normal self though slightly more contemplative. "I'm thinking you have the right idea," Logan said. "I wouldn't mind normally, but I do like seeing them enjoy themselves too." Harry nodded. "You can go ahead and tell the kids that you arranged it with the sentient island to protect you from the storm." When Logan looked at him strangely, Harry shrugged. "You are the caretaker of these lands. You probably could ask it and it would comply. The children should know that you did it especially for them though." "I really hope you are kidding." Logan said. "No, you really could ask the island to change the weather." Harry said. He was certain of it now that he thought about it. The island's enchantments were all tied together after all. "Damn," Logan swore. "I think I may have caused the storm then." It was Harry's turn to look at him funny. "When the kids complained about the rain, I laughed and called it nothing, told them they could learn from a bit of a storm. That's about when it started getting worse." Harry laughed, and when Logan looked at him in shock, he laughed harder. "Leave it to you to have control of the weather and making things worse when you yourself like the weather to take its natural course." Logan scowled. "Relax, my friend, we don't need to tell the kids you were trying to drown them. If anything, this will count as a valuable lesson for them in a controlled environment." Logan seemed to accept that logic much better than being laughed at. Then he nodded and walked off. He soon told the kids exactly what happened. Logan didn't like lying, strangely it seemed. The kids appreciated the honesty and soon rallied their spirits when food started being served. Nobody seemed to blame Logan since he was unaware. It spoke volumes of the amount of tolerance that was being taught at the Institute. Harry looked over and saw Charles smiling proudly at the future of their kind. Just as Harry finished making food, a scene he had not seen in a while occurred. Steve and Beast were racing again, and this time it seemed Steve was going to win. They were both covered in mud and skid marks, although Harry assumed it was from slipping. When Beast grabbed a log that formed a natural barrier on the side of the path and tossed it straight into Steve, he thought differently. Steve stumbled and took a couple of seconds to correct himself, which cost him the lead. Steve soon followed suit, but with a large rock thrown at Beast's legs, at speeds that would cripple a normal man, which tripped him up and Steve retook the lead. Steve finally jumped over the entirety of the pool and touched the counter first. Beast roared for a second but then straightened up and held out a monstrous hand when he had walked calmly over the bridge to the bar. "Well played, Steven," Beast said. "I did not expect you to trip me into that sandpit. It cost me the greatest lead when I couldn't build up speed quickly enough. But if it hadn't been for that, you would definitely have won again." Steve argued. "Wisdom is to learn from your mistakes and true wisdom is to learn from others." Beast said, "I will learn from this and next time I'll be learning from yours," he said confidently. "We'll see about that." Steve smiled, then he turned to Harry. "Did we miss lunch again? I just finished the last order, so you're exactly on time." Harry said, "What can I get you?" "I think I'd like the same as we got last time. Burgers with pickles on the side, please," Steve said. Beast nodded along. Harry waved a hand and cleaned them up before setting to work on the food. "Thank you," Steve said, looking at his once again pristine clothes. "Indeed, it's much appreciated." Beast said, "You have no idea how difficult it is to get mud out of my fur sometimes." "No problem," Harry said. "Can I get you a beer while you wait?" "I dare say we are rather parched, but I'd like a butterbeer, please," Beast said, looking at all the kids. "Though the normal one would suffice." He finished with a wink. "You do realize I can serve anything non-alcoholic, even alcoholic beer turns back into water if it comes from the tap." Harry said, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that," Beast admitted. "One beer then, please." Harry poured the man a large draft glass of beer and handed him a shot of fire whiskey on the sly. "Did you place a wager on this race?" Harry asked. Beast did seem slightly more upset than Harry thought he would be. "Oh yeah," Steve said with a smile. "I almost forgot. I had rather hoped you would." Beast said, glaring at Harry lightly. Steve smirked. "2 shots of every flavor for my furred friend, please." "You have become cruel since our last race, Steven," Beast complained. "Are you saying you would have forgotten our bet if you'd won?" Steve asked, daring the man to deny it. Hank seemed to deflate. "A bet is a bet. I am man enough to admit I would have carried it through just as I will now." Harry smirked but complied. It had become a game of dare amongst the Avengers. Thank Tony for that one. He placed the 2 conjured shot glasses in front of the man. One of the shots was grass green and the other pink. Tony leaned in close, wanting to see what happened. He really loved this game, though he hated losing at it. Beast sniffed at the shot glass with green liquid. "I smell nothing," He said, that would be correct. Harry said, it's part of the game. The flavor only emerges when it's in your mouth. Let us not delay then, Hank said as he poured the contents into his mouth. It tastes like paint. He looked at Harry, but Harry had the answer ready. It's completely harmless and will vanish once it reaches your stomach. Harry said, thank you. Beast said. He eyed the other shot and wondered what it could taste like. What was pink that one could taste? Nothing popped into his head, so he shrugged and downed the next shot. That's just wrong. He said, what is it? Tony asked excitedly. It tasted like the color blue. Beast said, the color, how can you taste a color? Tony asked. Wow, I didn't know my magic could do that. Harry said, I wonder if the other sword is also something I could make. What are you talking about? Tony asked. A synesthetic taste. Harry said, a flavor that associates itself with a different sense. You can do that? Tony asked. Apparently so. Harry nodded. I once heard of an ever-flavor bean that tasted like a headache. A headache? Hank asked. Your magical world seems to have ventured down interesting paths of thought. I called it insanity myself. Harry scoffed. Who needs to know the taste of a concept, color, or feeling? Psychopaths, Tony answered easily. If you could manufacture the taste of empathy, you'd have bottled a cure for psychopathy. I doubt a literal taste of something they intrinsically lack would cure their illness, although it is possible that with repeated dosing something akin to true empathy could arise naturally. Charles said as he strolled closer. What about sociopaths? Tony asked. Studies indicate they were not born with an antisocial personality disorder, rather they lost something due to circumstances. I think those cases may be even more difficult, Charles theorized. A subconscious mind that rejects something it already had may be more difficult to cure than someone that never knew true empathy to begin with. Are your subjects always so intellectually oriented? A voice asked. Peter Parker had apparently decided to join them. I hope it's okay that I'm here. I thought maybe you were discussing missions or something. Do you really think that's what we do in our downtime? Steve asked. Peter just stammered. But the reason became obvious when Harry was tugged by someone. Samantha had entered the bar and was holding her hands up expectantly. Harry just smiled at her and the 20 nymphs waiting outside the bar to be greeted. Where are the rest? Harry asked when he saw Zira at the lead of the troop. These are the ones that won the game of chance to come join you, Lord Harry. Zira explained. We realized that you have many guests and did not want to impose on your space. Don't worry about it tomorrow. The kids only join us in the afternoon, so you are more than welcome to come join us in the morning. Harry said with a smile as he hugged her with Samantha on his hip. You know you're always welcome. Natasha added from where she was sitting with Pepper and a mirror propped up before them at the counter. Frigga had called when she was made aware of wedding plans happening without her. That would simply not do, so even if she wasn't invited with so many guests already in attendance, she would not be left out. Thank you, my lady, Zira said with a curtsy before walking to her to hug Natasha as well. When Zira noticed Frigga, she curtsied again. Queen Mother, she said respectfully. Good afternoon, Zira, my dear. Frigga could be heard say, how is my favorite grove doing this afternoon? The grove thrives as always, Queen Mother. Zira said, thy son Lord Harry provides us with every necessity and more. Not yet, Frigga answered with a hint of humor. We could not ask for more. Zira said with a smile as she stepped back to allow another nymph to hug Natasha. The nymphs had formed a line to hug Harry and then Natasha. It had become a tradition and neither Harry nor Natasha could or wanted to break the habit. Harry knew that in the absence of other kinds of physical contact, this was the least he could do to quench their need for it. Who are they? Harry heard Peter ask from behind him. They are the wood nymphs of New Atlantis, Charles informed him. They are not hired models. Did you just? Peter started. Read your mind, Charles finished for him. No, though I didn't need to. Many of my own students had much the same thought the first time they met them. He said they are a magical race of tree spirits. Spirits? Peter asked. They normally live inside their trees. Charles confirmed. They have certain abilities that allow for them to influence the growth of nature, specifically plant life. And their allure. Harry spoke up after he hugged the last nymph. They have a supernatural ability to attract males besides being beautiful, that is. You flatter us, Lord Harry, Zira said with a blush. Praise from her lord was something they all appreciated, just an observation of fact. Harry said easily. Thy nymphs giggled, but soon they were swimming and playing in the pool, while the youngest nymphs and elves played in the shallow pool. They were never forbidden from the pool areas, as Harry liked the atmosphere created by happily playing children. Except for when there was nobody to supervise. Why do they call you my lord? Peter asked. He is our divine lord and king due to his familial blessings, his personal power, and the many gifts he bestows freely on those who reside within his domain. Zira said, please can you stop telling people that? Harry asked. He didn't like it when she went on about him like that. her perspective was skewed too. From my perspective, the land belongs to those who live on it and care for it. Zira just smiled indulgently. The fact that he is humble too is just another reason why we love him so. She said to Peter in a stage whisper. Give it up, Harry. Logan said, you know they'll never change their minds. At least with you as their benefactor, nobody is taking advantage of them. Harry had to agree. Some of the things he had seen still angered him to think about. But he was slowly getting over it. Yao's influence was helping, but even she could not stem the growth of support for Harry from his people. Every nymph on the island thanked Harry for not just their survival, but for the chance to actually live. The elves were also finding a strange thing happening among their youngest. They had started seeing the beginnings of accidental magic popping up here and there. This last fact was the reason why Harry was considering building a school on the island. A school for the study of magic. But it would be a few years yet until that became necessary, since the children in question were still way too young, even if they showed great promise by having such ability so young. Harry focused his thoughts back on the people around him. It was good to see so many people enjoying the atmosphere. The children had finally relaxed after their horrible trip to the campsite, and some of them had gone to the changing rooms that the room of requirement had become to get something to swim in. The pool, which had been expanded ever since the occupants of the island had increased, had a steady circular movement going which one of the mutants had encouraged with their powers. Some of the people seemed to like it as they lazed about and let the water carry them around the large circle. That's when Pietro asked, "Why haven't you opened the water slide?" Harry looked at Pietro like he'd been slapped by a fish. "You know what, it slipped my mind." As Harry lifted his hand, Wanda spoke up, "It's probably a bad idea to do it now. We're taking the children back to camp soon." "She's got a point, Harry," Jarvis said. "Perhaps it would be a better idea to wait until tomorrow afternoon when they return from the hike Logan has planned." Logan smiled at this. "I like it. We wear them out on the hike and then tempt them with more exercise climbing the water slide stairs." "I didn't thinking about that," Jarvis said with a smile. Unlike normal people, Jarvis loved it when he forgot something. It proved to him again that he was not just a machine. Harry didn't see that lasting forever. He just hoped Jarvis didn't forget the password to his subconscious or something. Then he'd be stuck being as human as he had wished himself. Logan took his drink in hand, downed it and stood up. "I suppose it's time to get to camp," he said. "Should I open a portal?" Harry asked. Logan thought about it before nodding. "I'll fly them here in groups after the hike tomorrow," he said before smirking. "Those that didn't forget what we taught last time anyway. Those kiddies get to hike here for dinner." "Be careful," if Harry started warning, but Logan's look silenced him. "Right, I mean have fun," he corrected quickly. Logan just walked off and Harry turned a portal on the other side of the pool that would go to the camp. "Hold up, Peter," Harry said. "I'll send you after. We still need to talk." Peter nodded and stayed behind. Watching the other kids go, "Harry," Tony asked. "You'll see," Harry said. When everyone had left, Harry let the portal close and looked around as he exited the bar. No sooner had he left it than the observant elf had appeared to take up the post. "Come on, Peter, we're taking a ride," Harry said as his carpet appeared next to him already floating in the air. Tony was already with him. Natasha nodded at him when Harry sent her a look, knowing that he was going to discuss something difficult. Harry took them up and over the island. The sun had just set and the sky still had a warm glow. "How are you enjoying the island, Peter?" "Me?" Peter asked, apparently surprised that the Harry Potter wanted his opinion on his private magical island. It's cool." He tried for nonchalant. He failed, but he tried it anyway before smiling sheepishly. "Okay, fine. It's amazing. The things Mr. Logan was showing us today as we walked was already interesting, but then I saw an actual unicorn and a giant Pegasus." "It is kind of cool, isn't it?" Harry said, looking out over the island. He spotted one of the erumpents and flew them closer to see them for himself. The creatures looked up and spotted him but didn't move otherwise. They just continued grazing. Harry noticed the area they were standing in was growing plants rapidly to replace what the erumpents ate. The big winged horse was known as an Abraxan in my home reality. "Reality?" Peter asked, looking between Harry and Tony. Tony nodded. "You mean you come from another dimension? Another reality?" Harry corrected. "I'm no scientist, but I'm almost certain your universe is part of a multiverse with infinite incarnations of possibility. My home world is outside of that somehow." "Wow," Peter said as he stared off into nothing and contemplated the consequences of a multiverse. "How is that even possible?" he asked. Harry wiggled his fingers and replaced Peter's arms with giant crab arms. "Magic," he said before turning them back quickly. Peter was freaked enough to scoot away from Harry. "Don't worry, kid, Harry likes shocking people, but he's one of the good guys." Tony said, okay, Peter said, still looking between Harry and his arms. So magic is real, I mean really real, he asked. Harry nodded. What can it do? He asked, despite himself. It would be easier to tell you what it can't do and then work our way back to the possibilities. Tony joked. He's even taught me how to make magic items. You mean like that bracelet thing? Peter asked. Do you not have it on you now? Harry asked with a sharp look. Of course not, Peter said. It's like a badge, right? I carry it when I'm Spider-Man. Harry looked angrily at Tony, who winced. Yeah, that's my bad. He apologized. Listen, kid, that is not a badge, it's your safety net. It's 100% magically enchanted by Ghost himself. I should have told you, but you're supposed to always have it on you. But what if someone sees it? Peter asked. It will look like a normal armband to them. Harry said, or a medical alert bracelet. It will look like whatever makes people ignore it. Except if you specifically show it to someone, Tony clarified, then it will look like it really does. To emphasize his point, he showed Peter his arm and pointed at a spot where a bracelet had just appeared. All of us Avengers wears them. Tony said, pointing a thumb at Harry. Even he does. Mister, I can teleport myself across galaxies in seconds. Really? Peter asked. That's really cool. Have you been to the moon? Could you take me to Asgard? What's Thor like? Relax, kid. Tony smirked, looking at Harry pleadingly. Harry nodded and turned a portal. Brace yourself, he said excitedly, as Harry transported them to the lunar base. Unfortunately, it was new moon, so they were getting a lot of sunlight, but there were still many more stars to see from the surface of the moon than through the atmosphere on Earth. Welcome to EPI's moon base. What? Peter jumped up and looked around. What? He repeated, and he saw the grass, trees, and fountain at the park. What? He said a last time as he saw one of EPI's ships doing a standard patrol, flying by slowly as a pilot saluted them. How? He looked down at the grass not too far down. Can I? He asked, pointing. Harry started taking them down, and Peter took that as permission, jumped down and landed on the soft grass. This is so cool, I wish I could tell May. That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Harry said as he landed next to Peter, who was still looking around. Peter froze. He really hoped Harry wasn't suggesting what he thought he was suggesting. Your aunt is the only person in the world who cares for you. Probably more than you care for yourself. I'd be a fool not to suggest you tell her. Harry said, we won't force you to tell anyone. Tony said before Peter could object, giving Harry a look. He thought he knew what Harry had planned. The thing is, secrets hurt everyone. When you keep a secret like this, you're hurting both her and yourself. I can't tell May, Peter objected vehemently. She'd never let me out of the house, like she could stop you, Harry said, and don't look at me like that. You were thinking it. Peter had just been about to object, even though he knew that if he needed to go, he'd find a way. Listen, we're not going to tell you how to live your life, but all of us on the team know what it is like to lose someone. Harry looked him straight in the eye. I know that look, Peter. I carry it with me everywhere I go. I lost my entire world. I can't stop feeling guilty, even though I know I'd do anything to save them. Can't you find a magical way back? Peter asked. It wouldn't matter, kid, Tony said for him as Harry looked off into the distance. Harry's world died when a monster engineered its destruction. Harry was the only survivor. Tony said, patting Harry's shoulder. He's a bit of an idiot though, so he blames himself. It's not like he sent the nukes himself. He didn't pull the triggers. He didn't blow up the hospitals. Every one of them died, and he feels like he could have saved more of them. But let me tell you something. All of us carry varying degrees of that with us. Tony said, you know my story, you know Cap's story, do you know Bruce's story? He asked. He was interviewed a couple of years ago and turned into the Hulk on live television. Peter said, everyone knows his story now. It had been Jarvis' idea. While public opinion was still good, it was best to milk it. Once the world knew about Hulk and Bruce, it became infinitely less likely that anyone could do anything underhanded. After all, who would attack or kidnap the man who was their best chance to curing cancer? So yes, you know his story. Tony said, do you see a pattern forming here? He asked. You're all trying to stop something from happening again. Peter said, exactly. Harry interjected. Trust us when we say we're only trying to do that right now. Don't keep this from your aunt. She'll likely ground you for putting your life at risk. But once she sees that you've got a calling, she'll just worry that you'll lie again in the future. And that knowledge will be like torture to her. Tony said, she'll blame herself for not knowing, thinking that she should have noticed. Then she'll start thinking you're keeping more from her whenever you get shifty. I don't act shifty, Peter said, avoiding eye contact and looking rather shifty. Look at yourself, kid. You can't even lie to yourself without having 10 tells. Tony said. Do you think your aunt can't see them as well, that she doesn't know them all? Peter finally stopped looking away. I thought you said you weren't going to force me. We're not, Harry said. We're just giving you the facts. On the bright side, if your aunt knows what you're doing, she can't argue with you being paid for it now, can she? Tony said. That won't work, Tony. Harry said, shaking his head. You show me a caring parent, and I'll show you someone that will tell you to shove your money where the sun don't shine. That might even work against him. He said, she might decide he's only doing it for the money and get a bunch of extra jobs so that he doesn't need to do dangerous work. And then I'll never see May. Peter agreed as he sat down on the carpet, finally starting to see what they were getting at. Fine, I can see you know what you're talking about. But if I do tell May, I want a bracelet for her too. Deal, Harry and Tony said at the same time. Harry continued, and we'll need the both of you to sign magical contracts. It will protect ours and your secrets even from mind readers. She also doesn't like Spider-Man. Peter put in. Has she ever met him? Harry asked. Peter shook his head. She'll change her tune once she sees you in action after she knows. The first time will freak her out though. After that she'll ask you a million questions before she starts accepting things. Tony said. We can help with that though. Harry said. How? Peter asked. That's for us to know and you to find out. Tony smirked. Could we bring May here? Peter asked with a sudden smile. Suddenly telling her the truth didn't seem like such a bad deal. I don't know, Harry said with a hidden smile. Isn't she at work? What does she do anyway? Tony asked. She's a nurse in the emergency room. Peter answered. Oh, that makes things easier. Harry said, having a thought. Aunt May might find herself a recipient of an invitation to come work for EPI. Soon, so, Peter trailed off before continuing. Asgard next, he asked with hope in his voice. I'm afraid us mortals aren't allowed on their cloud. Tony scoffed. You know there's reason for that, right? Harry said. Oh please, I'm not fragile and Peter here is probably stronger than most of them. Tony said. Still doesn't change the rules. Harry said. You do know the actual reason, right? He asked, not waiting for an answer. They don't allow normal humans, because your short lifespans would only hurt them when they form attachments. It wasn't strictly true, but Harry knew he was really hoping for a philosopher's stone, so that he didn't have to contemplate the situation he just described. You're full of it, Tony said. He knew Harry had just described one of his own fears. He suspected that that was the reason Odin had approved a golden apple tree for New Atlantis. The old man really cared for Harry. And I'm living forever, so don't go grouping me with everyone else. Why do you say normal humans like you're not one of us? Peter asked. Harry looked at him and said simply, I age very slowly. I'll live a couple of thousand years, so they allowed me in. How old are you? Peter asked. 37. Harry said, you look old but not that old. Peter nodded, seeming to understand. Harry cast a glamour on himself and Tony that made them both look younger, while simultaneously aging Peter 20 years. Then he conjured a mirror. I don't know, I think we look good for our age, right Tony? He said, throwing an arm around Tony's shoulder. They both looked like they were in their late teens. Damn, I'm looking good, Tony said, putting a hand on his cleanly shaven face and feeling the beard under the glamour. What did you do? Peter asked, looking at himself. I'm ancient, you're only 20 years older. Harry said, that's hardly old. Peter soon caught on when he felt his unblemished face under the glamour with the beginnings of laugh lines next to the eyes. That was so mean. Peter said, blame Loki. Tony said, did Harry ever tell you that he was adopted by the Asgardian royal family? He walked to Peter and led him through the portal that Harry had just opened to the island. As they walked, Tony told him of a couple of Harry's better pranks in the prank war. The next day dawned bright and early as Harry and Natasha got up together. She regretfully had to go to work. The kids would be going on their hike to the creatures today, and Sunday they had off, while Monday was a public holiday and they would be doing their teamwork exercises then. Harry apparated to the camp and started up breakfast. He noted Wanda was already there, drinking a cup of tea. He smirked and wondered if she had spoken to Darcy. Either way, he had work to do. The kids had started stirring, and he knew Logan would be there soon to bring the food out. Pretty soon the kids were sorted, and Harry apparated back to the bar, where the adults had started gathering and drinking tea and coffee served by the elves. There were a couple of elves allowed behind the bar now. Harry didn't want to saddle just one guy with the job in case he got sick, so he'd allowed a small staff to serve as waiters and bartenders, with the proviso that they take enough breaks and never overwork themselves. As he understood it, there was a lottery for who got to do the job. They then rotated the shift so that everyone got a chance, except for the lucky bartenders who Harry had to allow behind the bar. They had soon become very popular. Exclusivity breeds demand after all. Harry soon had breakfast served and started on another project of his. He allowed the water slide to appear and then set to work. By the time the kids came back from their trip, much more excitedly than the previous day, Harry was ready for them. He had hidden the water slide just like before and waited to serve lunch first. Once lunch was consumed, he asked the adults who had seen him work earlier if they wanted to go first. Nearly all of them jumped up to get in line. Harry had not allowed anyone on the water slide when he was working on it, so they had been left to only trace out the impossible twists and turns and had wanted to give it a try. Harry led them to where the entrance was and held a hand up to pause them. "Can I have your attention, please?" he asked needlessly. The moment the adults moved so excitedly, the kids had all started paying attention. "I'd like to thank you for coming to visit the island. As a special treat, I have decided to provide some entertainment." There were a few scattered cheers. "Allow me to present my water slide." He said it deprecatingly, like it was a small, insignificant thing. What he revealed left the kids' mouths hanging open. The best part was a new feature, an elevator of sorts. You walked to where the stairs used to be and it started levitating you straight up to the entrance of the water slide. It then deposited you in the stream, already at the right speed to maximize your experience. The adults went first and Harry let them go a couple of times before he unleashed the horde on the water slide. Logan soon had a position at the entrance to the elevator, where he made sure too many didn't try to go as a group. Harry had assured him of their safety. But Logan didn't trust all these kids to not somehow find a flaw in the design to exploit, so he dutifully took his post. Scott decided it was a good idea and stood in the water near the exit of the crazy water slide to get the children out of each other's way. The day was another rousing success and Sunday followed a very similar trend, but with kids now flying on brooms and playing Quidditch. It technically counted as a team exercise. So Logan didn't argue one way or another. He was playing ref from his carpet. Harry had been disappointed when he realized Logan liked it better than brooms, but didn't argue when he realized Logan probably liked it better because it could carry cargo. The team that won the game got to get their lunch first, as was becoming tradition. Then Logan scurried them off to camp for a night of fun with ghost stories. Knowing he could manipulate the island had given him some ideas, like the mist rolling in just as soon as the fire was lit, and everyone was ready. The rumble of lightning in the distance was a nice touch, Harry thought, from where the adults were watching remotely through a hidden and silenced mirror. The fact that he had enlisted the help of some of the creatures of the island had made a wonderfully scary effect, and Logan had needed to introduce all the creatures who had participated to put some of the younger kids at ease. The next day Logan had them run drills as teams, having them perform functions that would have everyone perform only as fast as their slowest member. The idea wasn't to frustrate them, even though a lot of them were frustrated by the pace. The teams that did the best were the ones that were better at teamwork, and that was what Logan was after. The morning quickly gave way to afternoon, and the kids were all exhausted by the time they arrived for lunch. Physically and emotionally in some cases. Harry had had to admit that Logan was a very good instructor, keeping everyone's strengths and weaknesses in mind before giving everyone their individual group tests. He had specifically designed the tests to push at the boundaries of every member's capability. When lunch was over, Logan informed everyone to go clean up their cabins before they could spend an hour swimming and flying as they wanted. The weekend was at an end, and this was their last time to enjoy the island's attractions. Some of the kids had flown off to go spend some time with the hippogriffs, as they enjoyed the calm, proud creatures' company. They were still a favorite attraction on the island, as Charlie was very welcoming to any of the children he had met before. This scored him big points in their opinion, which in turn scored those children big points with Harry and Logan. If anyone was going to come work on the island, it would be people like those, who truly enjoyed the company of the creatures. When the time came for everyone to leave, Harry opened the portal, but handed out special X-Men trainee armbands, which was requested by some of the kids, having seen Peter's armband and wanting to show their pride in their own team. Harry didn't mind. Added protections for the kids was always a good thing. Everyone said goodbye and left to the Institute, until it was just Peter, Jarvis, Wanda, and the Avengers on the island. Even Rhodey and Sam had joined them. Since it was an official Avengers weekend, there had been quite a bit of interest in meeting the X-Men and vice versa, as much could be learned through sharing experiences. So Peter, Steve asked, "I hear you want to be an Avenger." Peter hesitated. "I'd love to, but I think I have some things to get used to first. This weekend taught me that I have a lot to learn." He apologized. "This one shows promise." Thor enthused. "Learning your weaknesses and coming to accept and improve upon them is a great thing to do. I wish I was wise enough to do so in my youth." "You're still young, Thor, at least by Asgardian standards." Harry said, "Comparatively speaking, I'm more mature than you are." Thor smiled at Harry. "That doesn't change the fact that I am older and so I'm still the eldest." It sounded like Thor was bragging, so Harry just shook his head with a smile. Steve took control of the conversation again. "I agree with Thor. You are showing that you have the right stuff, and once you are ready, there will be a place for you in the team." Then he smirked. "If you survive high school, that is." "Yeah, good luck with puberty, kid." Tony joked. "Don't let him fool you." Harry stage whispered, "He's actually looking forward to you joining our ranks. You should see some of the stuff he's got in mind for you." "Hey," Tony objected, "that's a surprise and you know it," he pouted. Then he turned to Peter and handed him a small parcel. this is for you. I had Friday fabricate it for you after you told me about the reason for your goggles. Peter took out a small briefcase which had been shrunk. Is this shrunk? He asked intelligently. It will unshrink itself in an hour. Harry said, I thought it would be best if you had an easy way to hide it until you could stash it. Remember to have that talk with your aunt and let us know when you are ready for her to meet us. We'd love to have all this info under contract. Harry said as he handed him the portkey he had used to bring Peter to the island. Are you sure my contract won't activate if I tell her? Peter asked. You are allowed to tell your own secrets, just not ours. Tony said, just like we can't tell your aunt about you. Peter nodded in understanding. He had read the contract, had to actually, but just wanted to be sure. Okay, I'll be in contact, he said before activating the portkey's return function. He's a good kid. Steve said, it'll be nice to work with him. Don't get your hopes up yet. Harry said, I'm still hoping we won't need him for a few years. You just had to go and say it, didn't you? Tony asked rhetorically. Now we'll need him within the year, knowing he'll be training with us by next week. Harry laughed. So what's next? Tony asked. Next, I'm getting back to work. It's time to go medieval, Harry said with a vicious smile.